The gods' work was great, the toil was heavy. This lament, etched into ancient Mesopotamian clay, is not the beginning of a simple myth, but the premise of a staggering claim that humanity was not born of divine love, but was deliberately engineered for labor. The story asserts that powerful beings, known to the Sumerians as the Anunnaki, descended from the heavens and found the burden of developing planet Earth too immense to bear alone. Their solution was as pragmatic as it was world-altering. They would fashion a new subservient species to take over their toil. This is the tale of how humanity was created to serve, a narrative thread that forms the very foundation of a secret history, one that suggests our purpose was defined before we ever drew our first breath. The name that echoes through these ancient tales is the Anunnaki. References to them are found inscribed on ancient cuneiform tablets, the wedge-shaped script of Sumer, which chronicle intricate and profound myths. These beings are not depicted as ethereal spirits, but as potent deities who descended to Earth, profoundly shaping its destiny and, some believe, continuing to watch over it from afar. In the venerable Babylonian epic, the Epic of Atrahasis, we find a celestial hierarchy. The more exalted gods, the arbiters of fate, are seen meticulously plotting the course of events. Below them, the Igigi, the lesser gods, were burdened with the grueling physical tasks. The Anunnaki also feature prominently in the Enuma Elish, another celebrated Babylonian poem that provides a sweeping account of the creation of the universe. Their presence is felt in the world-renowned Epic of Gilgamesh, a story that stands as the oldest complete epic work known to humankind. They are mentioned in the Sumerian myth of Ishtar's descent to the underworld within the comprehensive Sumerian king list, and across countless other ancient myths, extensive texts, and historical inscriptions that have survived the sands of time. Could it be that these ancient chronicles were hinting at something more tangible? Did they describe the Anunnaki as formidable beings who journeyed from other, distant celestial bodies? Is it plausible that a connection exists between these powerful entities of ancient Mesopotamia and the revered gods of other ancestral cultures scattered across the globe? Does any solid archaeological evidence support the notion that extraterrestrial beings once walked our Earth? Or are these grand narratives merely symbolic allegories, personifying mythical or supernatural forces, as conventional academic thought often suggests? What you are about to read delves into observations considered highly contentious within the established historical and scientific communities. These assertions paint a picture that diverges dramatically from the officially recognized and widely accepted historical narratives. We present this information not as doctrine, but as an intellectual voyage, with the aim of fostering an open mind toward ideas that may seem new or unconventional. The conclusions you draw are yours alone. The power to decide what to embrace or disregard rests entirely with you. As the great philosopher Aristotle once wisely observed, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Let us then entertain a thought that has haunted humanity for ages. Could it be that these ancient chronicles were hinting at something more tangible? Did they describe the Anunnaki as formidable beings who journeyed from other distant celestial bodies? Is it plausible that a connection exists between these powerful entities of ancient Mesopotamia and the revered gods of other ancestral cultures scattered across the globe? Does any solid archaeological evidence support the notion that extraterrestrial beings once walked our Earth? Or are these grand narratives merely symbolic allegories, personifying mythical or supernatural forces, as conventional academic thought often suggests? What you are about to read delves into observations considered highly contentious within the established historical and scientific communities. These assertions paint a picture that diverges dramatically from the officially recognized and widely accepted historical narratives. We present this information not as doctrine, but as an intellectual voyage, with the aim of fostering an open mind toward ideas that may seem new or unconventional. The conclusions you draw are yours alone. The power to decide what to embrace or disregard rests entirely with you. As the great philosopher Aristotle once wisely observed, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Let us then entertain a thought that has haunted humanity for ages. The name Anunnaki is a whisper from the dawn of civilization, its roots deeply embedded in the mythology of Sumer. This ancient and remarkably advanced civilization flourished in the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, a land now known as modern-day Iraq, around 4,500 years ago. The very etymology of Anunnaki is a key to its meaning. It originates from the Sumerian word Anunna, which translates directly to descendants of An. In the Sumerian pantheon, An was the primordial deity of the sky, the revered father of all gods. The suffix kai is commonly translated as earth, thus weaving their celestial origin together with their profound connection to our terrestrial world. They were, in essence, the descendants of the sky who are upon the earth. Their journey to earth was not one of conquest or idle exploration, but one born of sheer desperation. They faced an urgent and catastrophic crisis on their home world, a planet slowly dying from severe environmental degradation. Nibiru, as Sitchin described it, was experiencing a calamitous atmospheric failure. Its protective shield was deteriorating at an alarming rate, exposing its inhabitants to the harshness of space and lethal cosmic radiation. The Anunnaki, with their vast scientific knowledge, sought a solution. They identified a singular, elegant answer to their plight: gold. They discovered that gold, when pulverized into an incredibly fine dust and dispersed into a planet's upper atmosphere, possessed the remarkable ability to reflect solar radiation, effectively creating an artificial shield to mend their world's failing climate. Driven by the primal instinct to save their home, the Anunnaki embarked on a monumental quest, exploring the cosmos in a relentless search for this precious, life-saving metal. Their journey brought them to our solar system, and eventually to Earth. They arrived in sophisticated spacecraft, vessels designed for the immense rigors of protracted interplanetary voyages. Sitchin theorized that these ships utilized advanced propulsion systems, perhaps even anti-gravitational technology, which allowed them to traverse the unfathomable distances separating Nibiru from Earth. Their initial arrival, approximately 450,000 years ago, would have been a spectacle of unimaginable proportions, instilling profound awe and fear in the primitive hominids who then populated the planet. This was a geological epoch when Earth was home to early species like Homo habilis and Homo erectus. The region of their landing, Mesopotamia, would later blossom into the cradle of some of humanity's earliest and most influential civilizations, a fact that theorists find far from coincidental. The Atrahasis poem provides a vivid, detailed account of their initial efforts on Earth. At first, it was the Agigi, a class of secondary or lesser deities, who were tasked with the backbreaking labor in the mines. The poem laments their condition, when the gods, like men, bore the work and suffered the toil. The toil of the gods was great, the work was heavy, the distress was much. For millennia, the Agigi toiled under the harsh sun, digging into the earth, enduring oppressive conditions and an unbearable workload. Eventually, their endurance reached its breaking point, Exasperated and rebellious, they initiated a mutiny against their Anunnaki leaders. In a dramatic act of defiance, they burned their tools and surrounded the dwelling of Enlil, one of the most prominent Anunnaki gods and the commander of the mission, demanding an immediate end to their prolonged suffering. Faced with this widespread insurrection and the halt of their vital gold mining operation, the Anunnaki leadership convened a council. A brilliant and radical solution was proposed. They would create a new being, a worker, to take over the arduous labor from the Igigi. This new being was to be humanity. As the ancient myth recounts, humans were ingeniously fashioned by combining the clay of the earth with the blood of a sacrificed god, a gesture believed to have imparted a spark of the divine essence into our mortal flesh. The fundamental purpose of humanity's creation, according to these tales, was to serve to perform the demanding work so that both the Igigi and the Anunnaki could finally experience rest. This is the story of how the Anunnaki created humankind, a narrative meticulously recorded in the ancient clay of the Atrahasis poem. While the ancient myths speak of humanity being fashioned from clay, the contemporary hypothesis advanced by Zechariah Sitchin proposes a far more scientific, though no less astonishing, origin story. According to his interpretation, the Anunnaki did not rely on magic or divine miracles, but on a technology so advanced it would seem like magic to any primitive observer, genetic engineering. They did not create humans from inanimate material, but rather they selected a species of primitive hominid that already inhabited the earth. This species was likely Homo erectus, a creature that walked upright but lacked the higher cognitive functions that define modern humans. The Anunnaki, acting as cosmic geneticists, purportedly altered the DNA of this ancestral primate to engineer a new species, one fit for their purpose, Homo sapiens. Sitchin proposed that this sophisticated act of genetic modification could be the missing link that explains the great leap forward, the sudden and explosive development of human intelligence, language, and culture that remains a puzzle for paleoanthropologists today. It could account for our demonstrably superior intellectual and social capabilities when compared to all other species on the planet. The very first human being created by the Anunnaki through this process was, according to Sitchin's reading of the texts, named Adamu. He was the prototype, the initial entity endowed with an enhanced biology and a heightened intelligence, making him optimally suited for the arduous tasks the Anunnaki required. The name Adamu itself is incredibly resonant, bearing a striking linguistic connection to the Hebrew word Adamah, which signifies earth or clay. This echoes with uncanny precision the biblical's. Within the Bible, the famous tree of knowledge of good and evil represents a forbidden wisdom. By consuming its fruit, Adam and Eve acquire a moral and ethical consciousness that leads to their expulsion from paradise. Their banishment from Eden is framed as a punishment, one that specifically prevents them from also partaking of the tree of life, and thereby attaining the immortality of the gods. Sitchin, however, offered a different interpretation of this story. He saw the Garden of Eden not as a mythical paradise, but as a real physical location, a designated base of operations established by the Anunnaki, strategically situated in what is now Mesopotamia. He pointed to the Sumerian term Eden, which means home of the righteous ones, and suggested it may have functioned as a kind of sophisticated biological laboratory. It was in the Eden that the earliest humans were created, observed, and subjected to further genetic modifications. The conflict in the garden was not about apples and serpents, but about knowledge and power. Enki, a prominent Anunnaki leader and brilliant scientist, was the chief genetic engineer responsible for humanity's creation. He advocated for bestowing more knowledge and autonomy upon his creation. His half-brother Enlil, the stern commander of the Earth mission, vociferously opposed this. Enlil harbored deep-seated fears that humanity, if allowed to become too knowledgeable and self-aware, would grow excessively powerful and ultimately uncontrollable. Once the first humans were perfected, they were permitted to proliferate, establishing a substantial labor force. Humanity thus assumed the responsibilities of mining gold and performing all the other demanding tasks that had previously been the burden of the lesser gods. They became the servants of their creators, toiling in the mines of southern Africa and the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, unaware of their cosmic origins. The Anunnaki did not operate as a chaotic band of visitors, but within a rigidly structured and highly hierarchical society, a reflection of their advanced and orderly civilization. At the apex of their power structure was a king, along with other members of a royal family who were primarily responsible for making the pivotal decisions that guided their entire civilization. In Sitchin's chronicles, the supreme monarch of the Anunnaki was Anu. As the sovereign king, he resided on their home planet, Nibiru, and held ultimate authority in all matters, both political and scientific. His rule was absolute, and his decrees were carried down through the chain of command. On Earth, the mission was managed by his two most prominent sons, Enki and Enlil, whose complex and often fraught relationship became a central drama that significantly influenced the destinies of both the Anunnaki and their human creations. The enduring rivalry between these two half-brothers is a recurring theme in the Sumerian tablets. Enki, whose name means Lord of the Earth, was a brilliant scientist, a master geneticist, and was widely recognized as the god of wisdom, water, and creation. He was the principal architect of humankind and often displayed a compassionate, almost fatherly disposition toward his creation, advocating for their advancement. Enlil, whose name means Lord of the Command, was the opposite. He was a stern, authoritarian leader, the chief administrator of the Earth colony, and the rigorous enforcer of Anunnaki law. He viewed humanity as little more than tools, a subservient species created for a single purpose, and he harbored a deep distrust of their potential. This fundamental clash of ideologies between the pragmatic scientist and the strict commander shaped countless events, from the decision to grant humans knowledge to the cataclysmic event of the Great Flood. Beyond the vital task of mining for resources, the Anunnaki are said to have imparted extensive and transformative knowledge to the burgeoning human societies. Sitchin argued that the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in Sumer was not a coincidence, but a direct gift from these celestial teachers. They taught humanity the complex arts of astronomy, revealing the cycles of the stars and planets, mathematics, introducing the sexagesimal base 60 system that we still use today to measure time in circles, architecture, guiding the construction of the first cities and monumental ziggurats, and agriculture, teaching them how to cultivate crops and domesticate animals, which led to the first settled communities. Because of their remarkably advanced technology, which would have appeared as pure magic, and their extraordinarily long lifespans, which made them seem immortal, it was only natural that humanity came to venerate them as gods. The temples and priesthoods of ancient Sumer were, in this view, not just religious institutions, but centers for communicating with and serving these powerful, tangible beings who walked among them. The Anunnaki are consistently described in ancient texts and depicted in art as beings of truly colossal stature, especially when compared to ordinary humans. Their estimated height is often cited as ranging from 10 to 16 feet, or 3 to 5 meters tall. This immense physical size would have given them an imposing and awe-inspiring presence, a quality that would have undoubtedly contributed to their perception as divine or superhuman beings. Imagine a creature twice or even 3 times the height of a man, and it becomes easy to understand why they were worshipped and feared. Beyond their towering height, they are widely believed to have possessed large, distinctively elongated skulls. This feature, seen in various artifacts and carvings, is one of the most intriguing and debated aspects of their appearance. While mainstream science often attributes such depictions to artistic convention or the practice of artificial cranial deformation, alternative theorists see it as a literal representation of their non-human physiology. Their eyes are frequently depicted as being exceptionally large and piercing, seeming to hold a profound depth of wisdom and intelligence, endowing them with an unmistakable aura of authority and ancient knowledge. In some accounts, their skin is described as having a golden or bronze tone, a characteristic often linked in ancient mythologies to divinity or celestial origins. They are regularly shown adorned in elaborate and intricate attire, meticulously crafted from materials that would have been entirely unknown to the humans of that ancient epoch. These garments were not simply cloth robes. They were often depicted as sophisticated armor or regal vestments that appeared to have technological functionalities. Some carvings show them wearing wrist devices that resemble modern watches or communication devices, and they are often depicted holding strange scepters or rod-like instruments, which some interpret as tools or weapons. While their primary form was humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and a torso, they are also described with features that subtly hinted at their extraterrestrial nature. The most famous of these are the wings, seen in some ancient Mesopotamian carvings, particularly those of the Apkallu, or sages. These wings imparted upon them a divine aura, symbolically suggesting their capacity to traverse the heavens, or perhaps literally representing their ability to fly, either naturally or with the aid of personal flight technology. Some theorists speculate that the Anunnaki utilized their highly advanced technology to simulate abilities that would have been perceived as miraculous by early humans, such as levitation, telepathy, and perhaps even the manipulation of time itself. Their appearance was a masterful blend of the familiar and the alien, the human-like and the divine, cementing their status as gods in the minds of their human followers. For countless millennia, the Anunnaki coexisted with their human creations, working alongside them, guiding their development, and diligently sowing the invaluable seeds of knowledge and civilization across the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. They oversaw the construction of cities, the establishment of laws, and the flourishing of a culture that would lay the foundation for the entire Western world. However, like all great cycles in the grand tapestry of time, their tenure on Earth was not destined to last forever. Eventually, their long sojourn drew to a close. Several factors contributed to their ultimate decision to withdraw. Back on their home world, the situation on Nibiru had gradually begun to stabilize. The massive atmospheric shielding project, fueled by millennia of gold mining on Earth, had been a success. The urgent, driving imperative to extract gold from our planet was therefore diminishing. With the primary objective of their mission accomplished, the justification for maintaining such a large and resource-intensive off-world colony was waning. Simultaneously, internal conflicts and significant challenges to the authority of the Anunnaki leaders on Earth began to fester, creating a pervasive atmosphere of discord. The deep-seated tensions, exacerbated by the enduring and bitter rivalry between the pragmatic Enki and the authoritarian Enlil, finally culminated in a decisive breaking point. Their disagreements over the fate and future of humanity, among other political disputes, had fractured the unity of the Earth mission. The majestic ships, the sky chariots, that once majestically soared through Earth's skies and inspired both awe and terror, commenced a gradual departure. It was not a sudden flight, but a slow, deliberate, and staged withdrawal. One by one, the great gods who had literally walked amongst humans, who had been worshipped in temples and revered as powerful, tangible deities, began to retreat from earthly affairs. As they left, their presence became more and more scarce. Anunnaki technology, once a common sight in the cities they managed, became increasingly sporadic and rare. Their profound teachings, once directly imparted to human scribes and priests, slowly began to fade from living memory, transforming over generations into the intricate and fantastical myths and legends that we are familiar with today. The gods were retreating to the heavens, and humanity, for the first time in its existence, was being left to its own devices. According to Sitchin's intricate hypothesis, the Anunnaki's departure from Earth was not an abdication of their power, but rather a strategic restructuring of their control. They did not completely relinquish their dominion over human affairs. Instead of governing directly, as they had for eons, they strategically appointed human kings to function as their proxies, their direct representatives of divine authority on Earth. This marked a pivotal shift from direct theocracy to indirect rule through a divinely sanctioned monarchy. The Sumerian tablets, when interpreted through this Anunnaki lens, meticulously recount how kingship was lowered from heaven. This phrase is seen not as a metaphor, but as a literal description of power being ceremoniously bestowed upon specific chosen individuals who would consequently become the first human monarchs. These newly appointed rulers were mandated to govern in the name of the gods. Their fundamental role was to be shepherds of the human flock, to adhere to the explicit will and laws of the Anunnaki, to maintain societal order, and to ensure the continuation of worship and tribute. The kings were the crucial link between the heavens and the earth, the intermediaries between gods and mortals. In some instances, it was asserted that these kings were not merely chosen, but were of direct divine descent. The texts speak of unions between the sons of the gods and the daughters of men, resulting in a lineage of demigods. These kings, it was believed, had the blood of the Anunnaki flowing through their veins, which granted them the legitimacy and inherent right to rule over other humans. This enduring concept of divine blood and sacred kingship was not unique to Sumer. It persisted throughout ancient civilizations across the globe, from the pharaohs of Egypt, who were considered living embodiments of the god Horus, to the emperors of China, who ruled with the mandate of heaven. The idea that rulers were demigods, set apart from common folk, may have its ultimate origin in this initial transfer of power from the departing Anunnaki to their first human representatives. Painstakingly inscribed on clay tablets in the intricate cuneiform script, the Sumerian king list is one of the most enigmatic and fascinating documents ever unearthed from the ancient world. Discovered at various archaeological sites across what was once Mesopotamia, it meticulously chronicles the succession of Sumerian kings, spanning from allegedly mythical eras of the distant past to historically verifiable periods. What makes the list so extraordinary is its account of the earliest kings, who are recorded as having reigned for impossibly long durations, often encompassing tens of thousands of years, all before a single catastrophic event that reset the clock, the Great Flood. The king list begins with the declaration that kingship descended from heaven and was first established in the city of Eridu. Alalim is identified as the very first human king to rule. According to the Anunnaki extraterrestrial hypothesis, this moment unequivocally marks the precise point when the Anunnaki transferred direct authority to human beings. The reigns listed for these antediluvian, pre-flood kings are staggering. The list states that Enlil governed over Sumer for an astonishing 2,800 years. His successor, Algar, ruled for an equally remarkable 36,000 years, while Enmenluana presided over the city of Bad Tibera for an astounding 43,200 years. These are not mere mortal lifespans, they are geological epochs. Some researchers suggest that these incredibly protracted reigns can be explained if these early rulers were either Anunnaki themselves or direct human extraterrestrial hybrids. Hailing from a planet like Nibiru, with its vastly different and longer orbital cycle, the Anunnaki would inherently possess lifespans that would seem eternal to short-lived human beings. In his interpretation of the Sumerian texts, particularly the Epic of Atrahasis, Sitchin posits that as humanity proliferated, the Anunnaki grew increasingly weary of them. Their noise, their burgeoning numbers, and their mounting disobedience became a source of great irritation to the leader, Enlil. As a drastic and brutal solution, the Council of the Gods, led by Enlil, resolved to unleash a global flood to completely eradicate humankind and wipe the slate clean. However, the god Enki, humanity's creator and protector, vehemently opposed this genocidal decision. Acting in secret, he chose to preserve one faithful human by providing him with precise instructions to construct a massive ark to survive the coming deluge. In the earliest known Mesopotamian flood narrative, the protagonist is a pious king named Ziusudra. Enki speaks to Ziusudra through a wall, forewarning him of the god's terrible plan to unleash a devastating flood and providing him with detailed guidance to build a suitable vessel to save himself, his family, and the seed of all living things. This ancient myth of Ziusudra subsequently inspired the more famous flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which the survivor Utnapishtim recounts the tale to the hero Gilgamesh. Following divine directives, Utnapishtim constructed a great ark and brought aboard his family and animals of every species. When the flood began, the storm raged, and the waters engulfed the land for 6 days and 7 nights, annihilating everything in their path. The waters ascended to such an unprecedented height that the texts say even the gods themselves were terrified, fleeing to the highest heavens, genuinely frightened by the sheer magnitude of the destructive storm they had unleashed upon the world. As the waters began to recede, Utnapishtim released a dove and a swallow, both of which returned, unable to find dry land. Later, he dispatched a raven, which did not come back, signaling that it had finally found a place to rest. This narrative finds a powerful and well-known parallel in the biblical account of the flood, which appears in the book of Genesis, chapters 6 through 9. God, witnessing the pervasive wickedness that had completely overtaken the earth, resolves to destroy humanity with a great flood, sparing only Noah and his family, who were deemed righteous. God instructs Noah to construct an ark, providing precise specifications for its dimensions. Noah's ordeal was longer. The rains fell incessantly for 40 days and 40 nights. After the waters subsided, Noah also released birds to test for dry land. He first sent out a raven that did not return. Then he sent out a dove, which came back with a freshly plucked olive branch in its beak, a clear sign that the waters were receding and life was returning to the earth. After the flood, Sitchin's narrative continues. The earth was left in utter devastation, and the Anunnaki, perhaps regretting their drastic actions, decided to give humanity a second chance. They chose not to completely annihilate the survivors, but instead to teach them how to rebuild civilization from the ruins. However, they made a critical change. To prevent humanity from ever becoming a threat again, the Anunnaki decided to drastically limit human lifespans. They allegedly altered human DNA once more, this time to reduce longevity and prevent overpopulation. Additionally, post-flood humans lost some of the advanced physical and cognitive abilities that had initially been granted to them. In this manner, the new breed of humans would be easier to control and less inclined to challenge the authority of their creators. The flood thus marks a distinct and clear division in the Sumerian king list between the impossibly long reigns of the early kings and the significantly shorter, more believable reigns of the kings who followed. For example, some post-flood rulers include Enlil of Kish, who reigned for 900 years, and the legendary Gilgamesh of Uruk, whose reign lasted 126 years, still long by our standards, but a mere fraction of their predecessors. This pattern is also mirrored in the Bible, where pre-flood patriarchs like Methuselah and Noah lived for many centuries, while their descendants in later generations had progressively shorter lifespans. While the extraterrestrial Anunnaki hypothesis interprets these flood narratives as a reflection of the Anunnaki's intent to cull humanity, conventional explanations from archaeologists and geologists suggest a more terrestrial origin. They propose that the stories are mythologized accounts of real, albeit localized, catastrophic floods that occurred in the Mesopotamian river valley, or perhaps reflections of the dramatic sea level rise that occurred at the end of the last ice age. Gilgamesh, the renowned and mighty king of the city-state of Uruk, stands as the central heroic figure in one of humanity's oldest and most profound literary works, the Epic of Gilgamesh. He is depicted not as an ordinary mortal, but as an extraordinary being, a figure of immense stature and superhuman strength, described in the text as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. This unique heritage is the source of both his incredible power and his deepest existential sorrow. According to the epic, his mother is the goddess Ninsun, a deity intimately associated with wisdom, prophecy, and dreams. For proponents of the Anunnaki theories, this divine lineage is a key piece of evidence. They suggest that his mother, Ninsun, was a full-blooded Anunnaki female, while his other parent, the former king Lugalbanda, was a mortal human. This hybrid union would explain Gilgamesh's demigod status and his extraordinary attributes. The towering height of Gilgamesh, which is prominently displayed in various ancient reliefs where he is shown effortlessly lifting lions, is attributed directly to this Anunnaki ancestry, marking him as a literal giant among men. One of the primary motivations driving Gilgamesh throughout the epic poem is his relentless and desperate quest for immortality. Despite being a mighty king endowed with godlike traits, he is forced to confront the terrible reality of his partial humanity, which ultimately renders him mortal. The death of his beloved friend and companion Enkidu shatters Gilgamesh and forces him to face his own inevitable demise. Terrified of death, he embarks on an epic journey to the ends of the earth to find Utnapishtim, the sole flood survivor in the Babylonian version of the narrative, who was granted eternal life by the gods. During their encounter, Utnapishtim informs him that immortality is a unique gift not granted to all, but as a consolation, he reveals the existence of a mystical plant that grows at the bottom of the sea. This plant, he says, will not grant eternal life, but it can restore lost youth. Gilgamesh successfully undertakes the perilous dive and retrieves the plant, only to have it tragically stolen by a serpent while he bathes. This final loss leads him to a profound and melancholic realization. True immortality for a mortal lies not in eternal life, but in the lasting legacy one leaves behind, the great walls of Uruk that he built, and the epic story of his life that would be told for all time. His story is a poignant allegory for the human condition, caught between our earthly limitations and our yearning for the divine. According to the timeline proposed by the extraterrestrial Anunnaki theory, these highly advanced beings arrived on Earth approximately 450,000 years ago. They are said to have remained on our planet, overseeing its development and exploiting its resources until the occurrence of the Great Flood, an event conjectured to have happened around 12,000 years ago. This would mark a continuous presence of roughly 438,000 years. During this vast expanse of time, it is speculated that their extraordinarily advanced technology enabled them to construct, or at least supervise the construction of, magnificent megalithic structures around the globe, such as the pyramids of Egypt. These colossal edifices are seen by some as far more than simple tombs. They are thought to be integral components of a sophisticated global energy or navigational system, one that encompassed other grand constructions in various regions of the world. Sitchin proposed that the pyramids served purposes that went far beyond being mere burial places for pharaohs. He suggested they were utilized for highly advanced scientific and technological applications, possibly functioning as powerful energy generation plants, communication hubs, or precise navigational markers for incoming and outgoing spacecraft. Proponents of this view argue that the Anunnaki either directly instructed human laborers or closely supervised their construction, given the remarkable mathematical precision and advanced engineering knowledge inherently required to build them. One of the most prominent theories concerning the Giza pyramids posits that they are precisely aligned with the three stars in the belt of the constellation Orion. In the case of the Great Pyramid of Giza, archaeological studies have demonstrably shown that its four faces are meticulously aligned with the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with a degree of accuracy that is astonishing even by modern standards. A compelling argument in favor of the Anunnaki hypothesis is the sheer, almost insurmountable difficulty of constructing the Great Pyramid using only the primitive tools, copper chisels and stone hammers, believed to have been available during that era. Archaeologists estimate that the Great Pyramid was constructed over a period of approximately 20 years, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. It is composed of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, varying from relatively small limestone blocks to massive granite stones employed in the inner chambers. These blocks possess an average weight of 2.5 tons, with some of the granite blocks located in the king's chamber weighing up to a staggering 70 to 80 tons. To complete the pyramid within the estimated 20-year time frame, it is calculated that workers would have needed to quarry, transport, shape, and precisely place one block every few minutes, 24 hours a day. The logistical coordination and organizational prowess required for such a feat are immense. To explain this, modern alternative theories suggest the Anunnaki may have employed technologies that are still theoretical to us, such as anti-gravity levitation or some form of free, localized energy to effortlessly transport and position these enormous blocks. Further contributing to the enigma connecting the Anunnaki to the Giza Plateau is the majestic Great Sphinx, the monolithic statue that stands as a silent guardian directly in front of the pyramids. The Sphinx has perplexed archaeologists for centuries due to its considerable apparent age and the notable absence of any clear contemporary records pertaining to its construction. While traditional theories suggest it was built approximately 4,500 years ago during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, some geologists have pointed to water erosion patterns on its enclosure walls as evidence that it might be much older, dating back to a time when Egypt had a rainier climate. Some theorists contend that it was erected much earlier, either by the Anunnaki themselves or under their direct supervision, serving as a symbolic guardian of the profound secrets of this forgotten extraterrestrial civilization. This pattern of mysterious megastructures is not confined to Egypt. On other continents, ancient monumental constructions can be found that defy easy explanation. The Great Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico, recognized as the largest pyramid by volume in the entire world, is another structure frequently cited in these discussions. It is argued that its immense scale and intricate internal complexity suggest a level of planning and knowledge that far exceeded what local cultures of the time would have possessed on their own. Meanwhile, the ancient city of Teotihuacan, situated near modern-day Mexico City, was designed with breathtakingly precise astronomical alignment. The Avenue of the Dead, which functions as the city's central axis, appears to correspond accurately with the rising and setting of the Pleiades star cluster. Additionally, the pyramids of the Sun and the Moon exhibit direct connections to the solar calendar and other significant astronomical events. The influence of the Teotihuacanos on surrounding cultures was substantial. Although the Aztecs flourished centuries after Teotihuacan's collapse, they held the abandoned city in deep reverence. They genuinely believed it was the sacred place where the gods had created the current universe, famously referring to it as the City of the Gods. For some, this name is not merely poetic, but literal. Are there connections between the Anunnaki and other ancient civilizations? If the Anunnaki were a global presence, one would expect to find echoes of their stories and influence in the myths and structures of other ancient cultures. Indeed, when we look closely, intriguing parallels emerge between Mesopotamia and other foundational civilizations, particularly Egypt. Mesopotamian accounts, such as the Atrahasis poem, explicitly describe how the Anunnaki created human beings to serve them and work the land. In Egyptian tradition, we find a strikingly similar creation myth. The ram-headed god Khnum, revered as the divine potter, was said to have shaped humans from clay on his potter's wheel, meticulously forming them from the fertile mud of the Nile. The ancient Egyptians also believed that their pharaohs were not merely human rulers, but were considered direct descendants of the gods, functioning as crucial intermediaries between the human and divine realms. This concept of divine kingship is a direct echo of the system in Mesopotamia, where rulers governed on behalf of the Anunnaki. The belief in a divine connection between rulers and gods may stem from a shared primordial myth that predates both cultures, or perhaps from direct Sumerian influence on the nascent Egyptian civilization. Another intriguing link lies in the remarkable similarities observed between some of their principal deities. Anu is the undisputed god of the sky and the progenitor of all gods in Sumerian mythology. He finds a direct parallel in Ra, the Egyptian sun god, who was also seen as the ultimate creator deity from whom all other gods emerged. Enlil, the powerful Sumerian god of the air, wind, and storms, who held command over the earth, discovers his Egyptian counterpart in Shu, the god of the air who was tasked with diligently separating the sky, Nut, from the earth, Geb. The storm god Set also shares attributes with Enlil, related to potent and often chaotic natural forces. Enki, the Sumerian god of water, wisdom, creation, and magic, can be effectively compared to Thoth, the ibis-headed Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, knowledge, and magic. The creator god Ptah, the patron of artisans and architects, could also be perceived as an equivalent to Enki due to his pivotal role in creation and craftsmanship. Similarly, the depiction of gods with hybrid or animal-like features is prominently present in both cultures. The Egyptians famously portrayed their deities with animal heads, such as the falcon-headed Horus or the jackal-headed Anubis, symbolizing their connection to the natural world and specific attributes. While the Anunnaki were typically depicted as humanoid beings, they possessed imposing features and were often associated with potent animal symbols like bulls and eagles to denote their power. Furthermore, Egyptian pharaohs like Ramses II were often represented in art as colossal, almost superhuman figures, towering over their subjects. Some proponents of Anunnaki theories argue that this was a literal representation, suggesting these pharaohs may have possessed direct genetic connections to their god ancestors, inheriting their larger stature. Additionally, both the Sumerians and Egyptians possessed a remarkable and sophisticated knowledge of astronomy. The Sumerians developed intricate star maps and calendars meticulously based on the movements of celestial bodies, enabling them to precisely predict astronomical events like eclipses. They created the sexagesimal base 60 numerical system, which forms the fundamental basis of how we measure time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and geometry, 360 degrees in a circle, to this day. The Egyptians also charted the heavens, recognizing constellations such as Orion, pioneering the 365-day solar calendar, and making significant advancements in arithmetic, geometry, and medicine. This profound and shared fascination with the heavens and the precise movements of celestial bodies strongly correlates with the belief that the gods themselves originated from the stars. The relentless pursuit of immortality is another profound theme that resonates deeply in both Sumerian and Egyptian cultures. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero king yearns for eternal life, undertaking a perilous journey to escape his mortal fate. In Egypt, the pharaohs and the elite meticulously constructed elaborate tombs and pyramids filled with treasures and texts, all designed to secure their esteemed place in the afterlife. For the Egyptians, the afterlife was not an ethereal concept, but a tangible continuation of existence, and meticulous preparation for this journey was a central tenet of their religious beliefs. Looking across the ocean to the ancient cultures of the Americas, additional parallels can be drawn. The supreme sky god Anu may be compared to the Mayan god Itzamna or the Aztec deity Ometeotl, both of whom were revered as primordial celestial creator gods of the universe. The storm god Enlil could be associated with the powerful Mayan god Huracan, from whom we get the word hurricane, or the Aztec rain god Tlaloc, both intimately linked to weather, storms, and divine power. The wise creator Enki aligns remarkably well with Quetzalcoatl, known as Kukulkan to the Maya, a revered deity worshipped by the Olmecs, Mayans, and Aztecs. He was a feathered serpent god associated with the wind, wisdom, knowledge, creation, and sometimes the planet Venus. An astonishing piece of potential evidence comes from La Venta, a major center of the ancient Olmec culture, one of the oldest in the Americas. A stone relief there shows a figure believed to be an early depiction of Quetzalcoatl, holding a curious rectangular object in his right hand. This object remarkably resembles the distinctive cubes held in the left hands of the winged genies, or Apkallu sages depicted in Mesopotamian art from halfway around the world. Coincidence or a sign of a shared ancient technological or symbolic heritage? The Nephilim, the Book of Enoch, and the Anunnaki connection or coincidence. The Book of Enoch is an ancient and profound apocalyptic religious text, typically excluded from most official biblical canons, with the notable exception of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. It presents a series of apocalyptic visions and captivating narratives about fallen angels, towering giants, and the very structure of the cosmos. The text recounts the extraordinary stories of Enoch, a biblical patriarch who, unlike other men, did not die but was purportedly taken by God to heaven. There he received profound visions of the celestial order, the laws of the universe, and humanity's ultimate fate. Some modern theories interpret these heavenly journeys not as spiritual experiences, but as literal, physical encounters with the Anunnaki. They suggest that these advanced beings transported Enoch with them. Did the Anunnaki convey Enoch aboard a spacecraft, taking him to a distant homeworld, or on a tour of their cosmic domain, unveiling different regions of the universe to him, as the text seems to describe? The Book of Enoch also explicitly mentions the Watchers, a group of celestial beings or angels who were sent to Earth to watch over humanity. However, some of these Watchers became corrupted. They lusted after human women, descended to Earth, and took them as wives, an act that violated a divine command. This unholy union produced a formidable and monstrous race of giants known as the Nephilim. Because of this grave transgression, the Watchers are considered fallen angels, forever pursued by the faithful angels who remained loyal to God. The text claims these fallen angels shared forbidden knowledge with humanity, sophisticated skills in weaponry, cosmetics, sorcery, and other cutting-edge technologies that humanity was not yet ready for. The Nephilim, their giant offspring, are described as being colossal in stature and possessing extraordinary strength. This formidable physical aspect imbued them with an aura of dominance over humans, a description that aligns remarkably with the accounts of the towering Anunnaki. However, the Nephilim were not benevolent. They became violent and destructive, consuming the Earth's resources and preying upon humanity. Their continued existence was deemed a corruption of creation, a danger so profound that it necessitated their complete elimination to restore order to the world. To cleanse the earth of the pervasive evil and corruption brought forth by the fallen angels and the Nephilim, God resolved to send the great flood. As physical mortal beings, the Nephilim perished in the deluge alongside the other corrupt humans, who were not granted passage on Noah's Ark. This narrative exhibits striking and undeniable parallels with the flood story of the Anunnaki, as recounted in the Epic of Atrahasis and other ancient Mesopotamian flood legends. In both traditions, a group of divine or semi-divine beings angers the supreme deity. Their actions lead to the corruption of humanity, and the solution is a world-destroying flood with a single righteous man chosen to survive and repopulate the earth. This raises several tantalizing questions. Were the ancient Hebrews, during their exile in Babylon, exposed to these powerful Mesopotamian tales and subsequently incorporated them into their own evolving cultural and religious traditions, which eventually became part of the Bible? Was there a single, real, catastrophic flood in this region of the world that was so traumatic it independently inspired these various flood narratives across different cultures? Or, as alternative theorists propose, could the Nephilim be considered the Hebrew equivalent of the demigod offspring that resulted from the intermingling of the Anunnaki and early humans? Are these stories all pointing back to the same forgotten historical event? In 1973, Francis Crick, the Nobel laureate and co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, in collaboration with the respected biochemist Leslie Orgel, proposed an intriguing and controversial theory known as directed panspermia. They developed this concept out of their profound astonishment at the inherent complexity and remarkable precision of the genetic code. Given the chaotic and volatile conditions believed to have existed on the early Earth, they found it highly improbable that a system as sophisticated as DNA could have arisen spontaneously from a primordial soup of inorganic molecules. They observed that the genetic code is nearly universal across every living organism on our planet, from the simplest bacterium to the most complex mammal, suggesting a single common origin for all life. This pervasive uniformity led them to consider a radical alternative, directed panspermia. This is the notion that an advanced, intelligent extraterrestrial civilization intentionally dispatched microorganisms, perhaps bacteria or viruses, containing a robust genetic blueprint to Earth billions of years ago, specifically to seed the planet with life. They argued that the intricate sophistication of the genetic code itself might serve as compelling evidence of intelligent design, rather than being the mere outcome of random, unguided evolutionary processes. Crick and Orgel did not assert this theory as an irrefutable fact, but presented it as a plausible scientific hypothesis to address the persistent and profound challenges in existing theories regarding the origin of life. Could this concept of directed panspermia possibly relate to the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the Anunnaki? Paleoanthropology dates the appearance of anatomically modern Homo sapiens to approximately 300,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene epoch. For tens of thousands of years, early humans exhibited behaviors and used tools that were only marginally more advanced than those of other hominid species. However, sometime between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago, humanity experienced a significant and sudden explosion in cognitive abilities, technology, art, and culture, a period widely recognized as the Cognitive Revolution, or the Great Leap Forward. There is no definitive scientific consensus for what triggered this rapid advancement, but leading theories suggest it may have been driven by a crucial genetic mutation, complex social adaptation, or dramatic environmental pressures. Advocates of the extraterrestrial Anunnaki hypothesis, however, contend that this sudden and accelerated development was not an accident of nature. They argue that these beings directly intervened, facilitating humanity's leap in intelligence. According to this theory, the Anunnaki combined their own highly advanced DNA with that of the pre-existing hominids on Earth, thereby creating the first true humans. This genetic intervention allegedly endowed humanity with a vastly enhanced brain, the capacity for complex abstract thought, symbolic language, and the ability to form large cooperative societies. While the Anunnaki proposal and its assertion of influencing human DNA currently lack any direct support from contemporary genetic science, certain intriguing curiosities within our own biology have prompted some researchers to wonder if there is more to our evolutionary story than we currently understand. Human chromosome 2 has been a subject of considerable interest in genetic research. At some point in our evolutionary past, two ancestral ape chromosomes fused end to end to form the single, large chromosome 2 that is a distinctive feature of the human genome. Our closest primate relatives, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, each possess 24 pairs of chromosomes, whereas humans have only 23 pairs. This fusion event is a well-established scientific fact. Some alternative theorists, however, propose that this unique chromosomal fusion was not a random natural occurrence, but an intentional act of genetic engineering carried out by the Anunnaki to accelerate and redirect human evolution. On another intriguing note, it is now known that approximately 98% of human DNA does not directly code for proteins. For many years, this was referred to as junk DNA, implying it had no purpose. More recent research suggests that much of this non-coding DNA fulfills vital regulatory or structural roles, controlling when and where genes are turned on and off. However, its complete function is still under active investigation, leaving ample room for ongoing debate and speculation. Certain theorists have suggested that this vast, mysterious expanse of non-coding DNA might contain hidden traces of the genetic manipulation carried out by our Anunnaki creators. They speculate that these beings may have left markers, signatures, or even dormant information within our very DNA that, if we could one day decipher it, could potentially unveil the intricate and forgotten details of our extraterrestrial origins. Across the globe, etched into stone and shaped from clay, are enigmatic figures and artworks from ancient cultures that seem to defy easy explanation. While mainstream archaeology offers rational interpretations for these artifacts, proponents of the ancient astronaut theory see them as tantalizing clues, possible traces of the Anunnaki's presence on Earth. In Canyonlands National Park, Utah, peculiar and haunting rock art figures created by the ancient Fremont and Anasazi peoples were discovered. These are thought by archaeologists to represent ceremonial figures, spiritual guides, or shamans in ecstatic states. Particularly striking are the anthropomorphic figures in Sego Canyon with their large hollow eyes, strange antennae, and elongated ethereal bodies. The prevailing academic view is that they depict visions experienced during shamanic trances or representations of supernatural beings from their cosmology. Alternative theorists, however, see a depiction of non-human visitors. In 1927, archaeologists exploring the arid plains of southern Peru made a stunning discovery: the Nazca Lines. According to official archaeology, these gigantic geoglyphs were created by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE. However, their true purpose remains a mystery. Proponents of ancient astronaut theories, most famously Erich von Däniken, have argued they were meticulously crafted as signals or navigational aids for visitors from other worlds. They claim these gigantic figures of animals and complex geometric lines served as landing strips or critical reference points for spacecraft. Among the most enigmatic of these figures is the one known as the astronaut, a humanoid figure etched into a hillside with large eyes, appearing to be waving. Similar in nature are the nearby Palpa geoglyphs, first scientifically studied in 1926. According to studies, some of these figures are attributed to the Nazca, but the majority were created by the earlier Paracas and Topara cultures. Some of these geoglyphs resemble small, surreal figures or mythical beings, while others appear to depict figures wearing something akin to a helmet with two strange extensions or antennae. Moving back to the cradle of civilization, a collection of intriguing statuettes was discovered in the ancient Mesopotamian city of Ur. These belong to the Ubaid culture, circa 6500–3800 BCE, which is considered a direct precursor to the Great Sumerian civilization. They depict strange, slender humanoid figures with reptilian-like features, including elongated faces, large coffee bean-shaped eyes, and distinctively pointed or conical heads. Often shown in positions of authority or nursing infants, they likely served a profound ritualistic or religious purpose. From a conventional archaeological perspective, they are viewed as symbolic representations of fertility spirits or supernatural beings from early cults. Modern alternative authors, however, suggest a more literal interpretation, a direct artistic connection to the physical appearance of the Anunnaki. In northwestern Australia, the Wandjina figures are prominent within the sacred art of Aboriginal culture. These are considered to be powerful ancestral spiritual beings who purportedly descended from the sky in the dream time to create the earth and its inhabitants. They are depicted with large white round heads, huge dark prominent eyes, but curiously no visible mouth. They are often surrounded by distinctive halos or lines of energy radiating from their heads. Viewed as bringers of knowledge and supernatural power, the Wandjina were believed to control the rain and storms, life-giving forces in the harsh Australian landscape. Located deep in the Sahara Desert of Algeria, the plateau of Tassili N'Ajjer holds one of the most extensive and important collections of prehistoric rock art in the world, with some pieces dating back approximately 10,000 years. The artwork includes depictions of stylized human figures with large round heads that resemble helmets, and strange, bulky suits. Some theorists have described these depictions as possible extraterrestrials in spacesuits or ancient gods, though mainstream archaeologists largely agree they represent participants in hunting rituals or ceremonial masks. In the caves of Val Camonica in Italy, thousands of petroglyphs have been found. Among them, certain human figures appear with what look like round helmets or unusual headgear, with rays or lines emanating from their heads. These have been interpreted by some as beings in spacesuits, but the general academic consensus identifies them as representations of warriors with ceremonial headwear, or shamans channeling spiritual energy. Finally, the Vimanas are legendary flying vehicles extensively mentioned in ancient Indian epic texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. They are described as sophisticated flying palaces or chariots utilized by the gods and other celestial beings to traverse both the earth and the sky. According to these ancient accounts, Vimanas were capable of executing incredible aerial maneuvers and flying at astonishing speeds. Modern interpretations by ancient astronaut theorists often compare them directly to spacecraft or highly advanced airplanes. In certain stories, Vimanas are said to have been equipped with powerful and devastating weapons capable of emitting destructive energy rays or producing intense, all-consuming fire. Are all of these disparate figures and prehistoric artworks irrefutable signs of the ancient presence of extraterrestrials or the Anunnaki? There is no definitive, concrete evidence to support this conclusion, and mainstream archaeology dismisses such claims as pseudoscience. However, each individual is free to examine the images and formulate their own ideas. Regardless of their true meaning, these ancient figures are undeniably fascinating, deeply mysterious, and well worth our continued exploration and rigorous study. Is Nibiru the ninth planet? The planet Nibiru, purportedly the homeworld of the Anunnaki, has long been dismissed by the scientific community as a modern myth, a fiction created by Zecharia Sitchin based on his personal and controversial interpretation of ancient texts. However, in recent years, a fascinating development has emerged from the world of mainstream astronomy. Scientists at Caltech and other institutions have engaged in serious discussions regarding the possible existence of a ninth major planet in our solar system, a hypothetical world frequently referred to as Planet 9. Could this elusive, undiscovered planet potentially be the very same celestial body Sitchin called Nibiru? The Planet 9 hypothesis was proposed to elucidate the peculiar and highly clustered orbits of certain distant trans-Neptunian objects, TNOs, in the Kuiper Belt. The orbits of these small, icy bodies cannot be adequately explained by our current models of the solar system. They behave as if they are being shepherded by the gravitational pull of a large, unseen planet lurking in the outer darkness. Based on these gravitational effects, calculations suggest that Planet 9, if it exists, would be a substantial world, possessing a mass approximately 5 to 10 times that of Earth. Its orbit would be nothing like the relatively circular paths of the other planets. It would traverse a highly elongated and elliptical path, taking it far out into the depths of space. While Earth completes its orbit around the Sun in a familiar 365 days, Planet 9's orbital period would be vastly longer. It would reportedly take somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single journey around our Sun. This long elliptical orbit is strikingly similar to the one Sitchin described for Nibiru, which he claimed had a 3,600-year orbit that brought it through the inner solar system periodically. If Planet 9 does indeed exist, it would be situated at an extreme distance from the Sun, far beyond Neptune's orbit, making it incredibly faint and difficult to detect. As of now, Planet 9 remains a ghost. It has not yet been observed directly with any telescope. Its existence has only been inferred through the intricate calculations of its gravitational effects on other celestial bodies. The search continues, and if it is ever found, it will surely reignite the debate about what other secrets the outer solar system may hold. Viewing the sacred texts of the Bible as potential records of ancient extraterrestrial encounters is a contemporary and highly controversial theory that has generated significant debate. According to this interpretation, certain biblical accounts, which have been understood for millennia in a purely spiritual or metaphorical context, might actually describe tangible interactions with technologically advanced extraterrestrial beings or their spacecraft. These encounters were mistakenly perceived as divine or miraculous by ancient civilizations who lacked the scientific framework and vocabulary to understand what they were witnessing. One of the most fascinating and frequently cited examples originates from the book of the prophet Ezekiel. The vision commences as Ezekiel is situated by the Kibar River in Babylon. He witnesses a great storm cloud approaching, flashing with lightning and glowing with a brilliant light. From within the cloud, he meticulously describes 4 living creatures, each endowed with 4 faces, that of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, and 4 wings. In Ezekiel 1-15, he states, "As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces." Beside these strange beings, he observed something even more astonishing, a complex system of wheels within wheels, crafted from a gleaming metal like beryl that could move in any direction without turning. Ezekiel also vividly describes the sound of the living creature's wings as being like the roar of mighty waters or the thunderous sound of a great army. Above the creatures and their wheels, he sees a sort of crystalline platform, and upon this platform a shining throne with a radiant, human-like figure seated upon it. Proponents of ancient astronaut theories, such as NASA engineer Joseph F. Blumreich, in his book The Spaceships of Ezekiel, suggests that these elaborate descriptions are not divine visions, but a primitive yet technically accurate interpretation of a landing spacecraft, complete with landing gear, rotating helicopter-like rotors, and a commanding pilot. In its traditional biblical context, however, this profound vision is understood as a powerful and symbolic spiritual portrayal of the indescribable glory of God. The account of Enoch's rapture, described in Genesis 5:24, is another profoundly enigmatic passage within the Bible. It succinctly and mysteriously states, Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. Although it occupies merely a single line in Scripture, it has spurred centuries of intense speculation regarding what truly transpired during this unique event. Enoch, a righteous descendant of Adam through Seth, is one of the very few biblical figures who does not experience a physical death. Unlike the other patriarchs, whose deaths are explicitly mentioned, the text simply states that Enoch disappeared because God took him. In mainstream Judeo-Christian tradition, this rapture is understood as a special divine act, a reward signifying Enoch's exceptional purity and unwavering devotion to God. However, in modern speculative interpretations, the phrase, God took him, is re-examined. It is thought to perhaps refer not to a spiritual ascension, but to a physical abduction by a technological civilization that interacted with humans in antiquity. In the second book of Kings, the dramatic account of the prophet Elijah being taken to heaven is described in vivid detail. Elijah is walking with his disciple and successor Elisha when suddenly the heavens open and a chariot of fire with fiery horses appears out of the sky. The book of Kings states, as they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. In traditional religious interpretations, the chariot of fire is a powerful symbol of the glorious and transcendent presence of God. Modern researchers who subscribe to the ancient astronaut theory, however, suggest that these could be descriptions of UFOs or spacecraft, perceived and recorded by ancient people who lacked the necessary vocabulary to describe advanced machinery, and therefore used the closest analogs they knew, chariots and horses. The star that guided the Magi to the birthplace of Jesus is another enduring Christmas mystery. The wise men from the east perceived in this celestial object a sign compelling them to seek the newborn King of the Jews. It is described not as a stationary star, but as a light that moved ahead of them and then stopped precisely over the place where the child was. In Matthew 2:9 it states, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. This description has led to intense speculation that the star exhibited intelligent, controlled movement, almost as if it were being directed by an intelligence. This idea, though highly controversial, suggests to some that advanced beings may have been present and subtly influencing key events in human history. The passage of the pillar of cloud and fire in the book of Exodus is central to the Israelites' monumental 40-year journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. It is depicted as a divine guide that physically accompanied them on their travels, appearing as a towering pillar of smoke by day and a radiant glowing pillar of fire by night. The biblical text in Exodus 13:21-22 states, by day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. This pillar would have been a truly awe-inspiring spectacle, a massive vertical structure vividly visible in the desolate desert landscape, providing guidance, light, and protection. From a religious perspective, the pillar of cloud and fire is seen as a direct miraculous act of God, symbolizing his constant and unwavering presence with his chosen people. In more recent times, with the advent of the UFO phenomenon, it has been suggested that the Israelites may have been witnessing and following a form of large spacecraft or advanced aerial technology that ancient people could not possibly comprehend or describe in modern terms. In Revelation 4:1, the Apostle John describes the beginning of a series of astonishing visions that seem to utterly transcend normal human understanding. Among these is the striking image of an open door in the sky. A voice resonating with the power of a trumpet calls out to John, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." John is then mentally or physically taken through this door, and what he witnesses is truly extraordinary. The first thing he describes is a magnificent throne with a radiant being seated on it, surrounded by a rainbow-like glow. The scene becomes even more overwhelming as he mentions flashes of lightning, voices, and peals of thunder emanating directly from the throne. In front of the throne there is a shimmering expanse like a sea of glass, clear as crystal, adding an almost surreal quality to the vision. Surrounding the central throne, John observes 24 smaller thrones, with 24 elders seated on them, elegantly dressed in white robes and adorned with golden crowns on their heads. Additionally, he describes 4 bizarre living creatures positioned around the throne, entities covered in eyes and possessing faces resembling a lion, a calf, a man, and an eagle. From a traditional theological perspective, John's visions are seen as direct symbolic revelations of the heavenly court where he is shown the very throne room of God. In modern technological interpretations, however, the open door in the sky is viewed as a portal, perhaps a form of interdimensional transport, a wormhole, or even the entrance to a massive mothership. The throne surrounded by lightning and thunder could represent the command center of a vessel with advanced technology beyond ancient comprehension. The 4 living creatures, covered in eyes and with multiple wings, could be interpreted as non-human entities, complex surveillance drones, or sophisticated robots. The hierarchical arrangement of the 24 elders on their thrones has been viewed by some as the command structure of an advanced alien society, or even as a type of galactic council or federation. There is no denying that these technological theories are bold and provocative, though they do not diminish the profound spiritual power and striking nature of these ancient biblical passages. One of the most intriguing and mind-bending theories surrounding the Anunnaki posits that they had mastered free energy, an unlimited and clean source of power purportedly available everywhere on the planet, drawn from the very fabric of the cosmos. It is proposed that they utilized this boundless energy to operate their sophisticated machines, power their advanced spacecraft, and energize the colossal structures they helped build. Proponents of this idea point to ancient sites like Egypt's Step Pyramid of Djoser and other megalithic constructions worldwide as potential evidence of these lost energy sources, suggesting they were not tombs or temples, but functional power plants. The assumption is that the Anunnaki may have shared some of this knowledge with early human civilizations, but over the long, dark centuries, the knowledge was regrettably misunderstood, corrupted, and eventually lost. Another related and equally stunning conjecture is the alleged ability of the Anunnaki to teleport or utilize interdimensional portals. Some interpretations of their story suggest the Anunnaki traveled from Nibiru not just in physical spacecraft, but perhaps by bending space-time itself, allowing them to cover vast interstellar distances in a remarkably short time. Others theorize that the Anunnaki meticulously created a network of interdimensional portals or stargates on Earth for instantaneous travel between key locations on the planet or even back to their home world. These portals might have also been used to move between parallel universes or realms that are normally invisible to human perception. Such advanced technology could potentially provide a literal physical explanation for the ancient myths about gates to the underworld or gateways to the heavens that are found in various cultures around the world. In Mesopotamian mythology, Irkalla, or the underworld, is described as the subterranean realm of the dead, ruled by the formidable goddess Ereshkigal. To enter this domain, the souls of the deceased had to pass through 7 gates, a system that could be interpreted as a series of portals connecting the world of the living to another plane of existence. In ancient Rome and Greece, the belief in gates to the underworld, termed plutoniums, often pointed to specific physical locations, like caves emitting toxic gases, that were believed to be literal entrances to the realms of the dead. In Mayan mythology, the terrifying underworld is known as Xibalba, and it was reportedly accessible through deep subterranean caves and cenotes hidden within the jungle. Some theorists propose that these sacred gates might have been ancient locations of dimensional portals that were once controlled and manipulated by the Anunnaki. The ancient Egyptians also believed in a complex underworld called Duat, which was accessible through hidden doors. To reach the afterlife, the souls of deceased pharaohs had to pass through a series of 12 gates, or pylons, each rigorously guarded by powerful deities and fearsome protectors. Another incredible technology attributed to the Anunnaki is the ability to manipulate time itself. This hypothetical ability may have enabled them to accomplish extraordinary feats, such as constructing massive, precision-engineered structures within remarkably short periods, a feat that would otherwise seem impossible. Sumerian and Babylonian architecture is also viewed by some as compelling evidence of the Anunnaki's technological influence on the daily lives of ancient Mesopotamians. While not as colossal as the pyramids of Giza, the ziggurats were undeniably impressive tiered temple structures that demanded advanced knowledge of engineering, mathematics, and materials. Their distinctive step design has been interpreted by some alternative researchers as being specifically intended for a technological purpose, perhaps to allow spacecraft to land and take off from their summits. Certain ziggurats achieved considerable heights for their time, making them prominently visible landmarks from great distances across the flat Mesopotamian plains. For this reason, some theorists suggest they served as a network of visual markers or even powered landing beacons for Anunnaki spacecraft. If the Anunnaki did indeed possess such unbelievably advanced technology, the question naturally arises, what happened to it? Where did it all go? One theory proposes that upon their departure from Earth and their eventual return to Nibiru, the advanced knowledge imparted by the Anunnaki to humans gradually faded into obscurity. Over time, humanity progressively lost the ability to comprehend, maintain, and utilize these sophisticated tools and technologies. Eventually, the memory of real technology transformed into stories of magic, and the engineers became gods, their works becoming mere myths and legends. The loss of technological knowledge is not an unprecedented phenomenon in human history. We know that other ancient civilizations developed sophisticated technologies that were subsequently forgotten for centuries, such as the mysterious formula for Greek fire, the legendary process for forging Damascus steel, the intricate astronomical computer known as the Antikythera mechanism, or the incredibly durable recipe for Roman concrete. We acknowledge that the possibilities discussed in this chapter may be challenging to accept, but our responsibility is to share them so that each individual can form their own well-informed opinion on these deep mysteries. Antarctica remains one of the least explored, most mysterious, and most inhospitable places on our planet. Its official discovery by human explorers occurred in the early 1820s. However, this established timeline is challenged by the existence of several perplexing ancient maps. A 1513 map created by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis remarkably appears to show a depiction of the northern coast of an ice-free Antarctica. Similarly, a 1531 world map created by Laurent Fine a renowned French mathematician and cartographer, also appears to depict the continent of Antarctica, showing river systems and a coastline free of ice. Did Piri Reis and Arantz Finet possess secret knowledge of Antarctica's actual geography, passed down from much more ancient seafaring civilizations? According to mainstream historians, they had no conventional means of knowing about this continent. The prevailing explanation is that it was common practice in that era for cartographers to fill in the blank spaces on their maps, and these depictions were likely based on the long-held classical belief in a great southern continent, Terra Australis Incognita, which was thought to exist to balance the land masses of the northern hemisphere. This raises another question. Has Antarctica ever been ice-free for a sufficiently long period to harbor ancient ruins? During a period known as Meltwater Pulse 1A around 14,500 years ago, global temperatures rose dramatically at the end of the last ice age, likely due to changes in Earth's orbit. However, this period of climate variation primarily affected the vast ice sheets of the northern hemisphere and was not intense or long-lasting enough to melt Antarctica's massive, miles-thick ice cover. So, has Antarctica ever been truly ice-free during Earth's long and dynamic history? Yes, but these ice-free periods occurred tens to hundreds of millions of years ago, long before human beings or even our earliest primate ancestors appeared on the planet. The slow shift to the icy conditions we see today in Antarctica began around 34 million years ago, at the boundary between the Eocene and the Oligocene epochs. Ice gradually accumulated, and by the end of the Miocene, approximately 5 to 10 million years ago, the continent was covered by a thick and permanent ice sheet, much like its present state. Going back even further, about 100 million years ago, during the age of the dinosaurs, Antarctica was an integral part of the supercontinent Gondwana. It was characterized by much warmer climates and was home to abundant biodiversity. In fact, fossils of lush ferns, ancient conifers, and other temperate plant species have been discovered on the continent. The fossilized remains of dinosaurs and other prehistoric reptiles have also been unearthed in some ice-free regions like the Antarctic Peninsula. Thus, it's entirely possible that well-preserved fossils of other unknown ancient animals exist, locked deep within the ice. The low temperatures significantly slow organic decomposition and can preserve bone structures and, in some very rare cases, even soft tissues. Because of its extreme isolation and the harsh, unforgiving conditions, much of Antarctica remains largely unexplored, leaving ample room for wild speculation and intriguing possibilities. In other regions of the world that were previously covered by massive ice sheets, such as parts of Europe and North America, significant archaeological remains have been uncovered as the ice has retreated. For example, in the European Alps, retreating glaciers have revealed astonishing discoveries like Ötzi, the Iceman, a perfectly preserved Copper Age mummy. Similarly, in North America, glacial retreat has exposed ancient tools and artifacts from native cultures that lived there before the last ice age. While the discovery of extensive, complex ruins is not widely anticipated by scientists in Antarctica, the melting ice could potentially reveal previously unknown fossils or unique geological formations that might fundamentally reshape our understanding of Earth's deep history. Regardless, the powerful fascination with this frozen continent at the bottom of the world is immense, and future explorations, perhaps aided by new technologies, might indeed uncover truly astonishing discoveries. Additionally, several intriguing geological and magnetic anomalies have been detected in Antarctica by satellites and ground-penetrating radar, prompting speculation about vast, hidden structures buried deep beneath the immense ice. In the northern part of the continent, satellite images have captured what appear to be pyramid-shaped mountains. However, the official geological explanation posits that these are simply nunataks, mountain peaks eroded by ice and wind into a pyramidal shape, a natural geological formation. In another part of Antarctica, a large oval-shaped anomaly has been detected under the ice, which some have interpreted as a potential entrance to a massive underground cavern or base. Some have even linked these anomalies to the speculative idea of cryptoterrestrials, ancient, non-human, humanoid beings believed to have coexisted secretly with humanity for millennia. Did these cryptoterrestrials establish a hidden base in the desolate wastes of Antarctica? Could they have done so in the distant past when the continent was more hospitable? Is it possible that another advanced, intelligent species currently unknown to us once inhabited Antarctica millions of years ago, leaving behind traces of their civilization for us to one day find? Do cryptoterrestrials exist? Are they connected to the Anunnaki? Although the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis may sound like something straight out of a science fiction novel, it is a concept that is increasingly being considered by some researchers as a plausible alternative explanation for the enduring mystery of UFO sightings. This theory suggests that UFOs and their associated entities are not extraterrestrial from other planets, but rather cryptoterrestrial, hidden on Earth. It posits that a hidden, technologically advanced civilization has coexisted secretly with humanity for millennia, or perhaps even longer. This theory suggests that these beings and their strange craft have consistently been on Earth all along, residing discreetly in the vast unexplored depths of our oceans, within hollowed-out mountains, or in sprawling bases deep underground. This hypothetical species might have evolved on Earth long before humans, or arrived in the distant past and decided to stay, developing technologies far superior to our own, which enable them to remain entirely undetected while sharing the planet with us. Advocates of the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis argue that many ancient myths about elves, fairies, jinn, or gods living inside mountains or in magical realms under the sea may stem from real historical encounters with these elusive beings. UFO sightings, they suggest, are not merely a modern phenomenon that began in the 1940s, but are the modern manifestation of a phenomenon that has deep historical roots, witnessed and recorded by our ancestors in the language and symbols of their time. On the other hand, proponents of the Anunnaki extraterrestrial hypothesis have sometimes adapted their theories to align with these ideas. They maintain that while most of the Anunnaki departed Earth thousands of years ago, a select few, perhaps a scientific outpost, a group of exiles, or dedicated guardians, may have remained behind. Could the beings we now call cryptoterrestrials potentially be the last remnants of the Anunnaki who chose to stay? In some modern reports of alleged encounters with beings linked to UFOs or similar paranormal phenomena, the entities are described as wearing tight-fitting or luminous suits. Certain accounts also depict them as being tall, larger than human figures, almost giant-like, a description that aligns remarkably well with the ancient interpretations of the Anunnaki. Are UFOs connected to the Anunnaki? Unidentified flying objects, UFOs, or as they are now more formally termed by government agencies, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, are renowned for performing flight maneuvers that appear to be physically impossible for any known human-made aircraft. They are reported to accelerate instantaneously, travel at hypersonic speeds without creating sonic booms, and make right-angle turns that would crush any human pilot. There have been numerous testimonies from credible witnesses, including military pilots and radar operators, about encounters with physical vehicles, and, in some more controversial cases, beings of apparent non-human origin. Some of the most extreme theories suggest that some of the alleged extraterrestrial crafts observed in secret military bases were not captured from modern crashes, but were actually recovered from ancient archaeological excavations, reverse-engineered from technology left behind long ago. Perhaps what is frequently observed in our skies are not new visitors, but the very same ships, or descendants of those ships, belonging to the beings who visited Earth in the distant past. Could the Anunnaki still be here, observing our progress, or perhaps actively and covertly interacting with humanity today in a manner similar to what, according to the ancient astronaut theories, they did in ancient times? The simple answer is that there is no concrete, definitive evidence linking the Sumerian Anunnaki to modern UFOs. While official government reports now acknowledge the reality of UAP, they do not attribute these events to extraterrestrial activity, let alone directly to the specific gods of ancient Sumer. The connection remains purely in the realm of speculation, a tantalizing what if that bridges our ancient past with our high-tech present. The weapons of the Anunnaki, advanced technology or tools of mass destruction. Throughout human history, stories of the formidable and terrifying weapons of the gods have been a central and recurring theme in the myths and legends of cultures all over the world. If the Anunnaki truly possess the advanced technology to traverse the vast distances between planets, is it not logical to assume they also wielded sophisticated and powerful weaponry to enforce their will and establish their supreme rule over early humanity? Ancient Mesopotamian legends frequently reference sacred and powerful artifacts that were utilized by the gods to exert their immense power and wage their own cataclysmic wars. Some modern theorists argue that these mythological weapons were, in fact, real advanced technologies capable of causing massive destruction, comparable in their effect to modern nuclear weapons. Sumerian texts mention the abstract concept of the Me, pronounced May, a collection of divine decrees or sacred powers that the gods possessed. The god Enki was the original custodian of the Me, which granted him unparalleled authority over all the various aspects of the universe and human civilization, from kingship and law to weaving and metallurgy. However, it has been proposed by some that the Me were not abstract concepts, but perhaps a symbolic representation of advanced technological blueprints or portable data storage devices containing scientific knowledge. One of these Me could have been the blueprint for a weapon of mass destruction that the god Enlil is said to have utilized in his epic battles. According to mythological accounts, Enlil wielded the evil wind, a fearsome weapon described as a scorching, destructive storm that laid waste to entire cities and unleashed utter chaos upon the land. Some interpretations compare this mythical weapon to the radioactive fallout linked to a nuclear explosion, or to an advanced form of climate control technology capable of inducing catastrophic weather events. An inscription mentioning the Me appears in the Sumerian poem The Descent of Inanna into the Underworld. A fragment states, "She gathered the 7 Me, she took them in her hand." Could this be a literal reference to gathering a collection of technological devices? In the Epic of Gilgamesh, another compelling and evocative passage reads, "The heavens roared and the earth rumbled. Then a profound silence fell, and darkness hovered. Lightning flashed, and a fire broke out. Where the blaze grew thickest, death rained down." Is this poetic language describing a volcanic eruption, or could it be an eyewitness account of a massive, technologically induced explosion? In the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian poem detailing the creation of the universe through a great celestial battle, another passage states, "Then the Lord raised the flood storm, his mighty weapon, and he mounted the storm chariot, the irresistible and terrible." Could the flood storm be an energy-based weapon, and the storm chariot a type of advanced aerial vehicle? In the Mahabharata, one of the two major Sanskrit epics of ancient India, a text over 2,300 years old, there are frequent and incredibly detailed mentions of flying machines, advanced missiles, terrifying energy weapons, and epic battles between gods and mortals. In one passage it states, "Then Arjuna, sitting in his Vimana, invoked the Brahmastra. An incandescent column of smoke and fire, as bright as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. It was a weapon unknown, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishnis and the Andakas." Could this be a chillingly accurate description of a battle involving a nuclear weapon or some other form of directed energy weapon? In some ancient depictions of the gods, particularly in Sumerian and Babylonian stone reliefs, certain figures are shown holding distinctive cylindrical or rod-like objects. Is it possible that these objects were not merely symbols of power, but were portable, handheld, energy-based weapons, or even anti-gravity devices? One of the most famous examples suggesting the possible use of weapons of mass destruction by ancient gods is the biblical account of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The story vividly describes fire and brimstone raining down from the sky, instantly reducing the wicked cities to ash in a single catastrophic event. Although this account is framed within the Judeo-Christian religious tradition, some alternative theorists, including Zecharia Sitchin, have proposed that the cities were deliberately obliterated by a nuclear weapon wielded by the Anunnaki. Sitchin referenced ancient texts and geological studies of the Dead Sea region to argue that signs of a massive, high-temperature explosion are present there. However, this claim remains highly controversial within the scientific community, with no definitive geological evidence currently supporting such an ancient nuclear explosion. On which planet in the Milky Way could an intelligent civilization exist? Assuming for a moment that the Anunnaki or another intelligent extraterrestrial species did originate from a planet within our own Milky Way galaxy, we can speculate on the most likely types of locations where such a civilization might arise. The Milky Way is a vast and sprawling spiral galaxy, estimated to contain somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. It is now widely believed by astronomers that most, if not all, of these stars possess at least one orbiting exoplanet. This implies that there are likely a minimum of 100 billion exoplanets in our galaxy alone. Among this staggering number, current estimates suggest that somewhere between 6 billion and 40 billion are thought to be potentially habitable, meaning they orbit within their star's Goldilocks zone, where temperatures could allow for liquid water to exist on the surface. While astronomers have discovered thousands of exoplanets to date, let's focus on just a few that show some of the greatest potential for harboring life. KOI 4878 Dodo 1, situated approximately 100 light-years away, is a candidate planet that, if confirmed, could be one of the most Earth-like planets discovered thus far. It completes an orbit around its Sun-like star every 449 days, and has an Earth Similarity Index, ESI, of 0.98, making it a virtual twin of our own world in terms of size and estimated temperature. If its existence is definitively confirmed, the likelihood of finding some form of complex life on its surface would be considered very high. Teegarden B, located a mere 12 light-years from Earth, is one of our closest potentially habitable neighbors. It lies squarely within the habitable zone of its cool red dwarf star and possesses a size and temperature remarkably similar to Earth's. Its habitability is rated as excellent, with an Earth similarity index of 0.93. Proxima Centauri b is the closest potentially habitable exoplanet to Earth, located just 4.23 light-years away in our neighboring star system. It orbits the red dwarf star Proxima Centauri and is believed to have temperatures suitable for liquid water, which could support the necessary chemical processes associated with life as we know it. TRAPPIST-1, situated 39 light-years away, is part of a fascinating system of 7 rocky Earth-sized planets orbiting an ultra-cool dwarf star. TRAPPIST-1 orbits within the star's habitable zone, receiving energy levels comparable to those on Earth. Its Earth-like size suggests a rocky composition, along with the potential for it to have a substantial atmosphere and a solid surface. Kepler 452b, located 1/400 light-years away, has been affectionately nicknamed Earth's older, bigger cousin. It orbits a G-type star very similar to our Sun, but the star and the planet are about 1.5 billion years older than Earth. This implies that if life did arise there, the evolutionary processes on Kepler 454b could have had a significant head start, potentially advancing much further than those on Earth. Some interpretations of the Sumerian tablets, particularly those favored by modern proponents of the ancient astronaut theory, suggest that the Anunnaki's story on Earth is not finished. These interpretations hint at a prophecy, that the Anunnaki might one day return, and that their reappearance could trigger a series of irreversible and profound changes for all of humanity, forever altering the course of life on Earth. One of the most significant potential outcomes of such a return would be the definitive revelation of the true and complete origins of humanity. We would be compelled to confront the paradigm-shattering possibility that human beings are not merely the product of unguided natural evolution, but rather the direct result of a deliberate and purposeful act of genetic manipulation by an older, more advanced species. This profound realization could ignite an existential crisis on a global scale, fundamentally transforming our understanding of ourselves, our religions, our science, and our place in the cosmos. If they were to return, their intentions might also include a course correction for humanity, particularly if they perceive that we have not progressed in a way they anticipated or have become a danger to ourselves and the planet. A more optimistic and fascinating possibility is that the Anunnaki's return could signify the formal commencement of open and direct contact between humanity and a wider community of advanced galactic civilizations. The Anunnaki might not be the sole extraterrestrial beings in the universe, but rather integral members of an expansive interstellar network or federation of advanced races. Their return could be our official invitation to join this galactic community. However, this is not the only ancient prophecy that speaks of intelligent extraterrestrial beings visiting our planet. The Native American Hopi tribe of Arizona possesses a rich and complex oral tradition of myths and legends that have been meticulously passed down through countless generations. Among these captivating stories is the steadfast belief in star beings, enigmatic entities that descended from the heavens to interact with early human beings. Could these Kachinas, or star beings, perhaps be another culture's name for the Anunnaki? One of the Hopi's most intriguing legends is that of the Star Children, who are said to be the direct descendants of these extraterrestrial entities. The star beings shared their profound wisdom with humans and had children with tribal women, resulting in hybrid offspring endowed with exceptional spiritual and intellectual abilities. These special children are said to be raised within the Hopi community but are purportedly taken back to the skies by the star beings at the tender age of 6. Some of these children, however, choose to remain on Earth, growing up among the Hopi, and eventually assuming important leadership roles within the tribe. The Hopi believe these star children have a vital purpose for humanity's future, as they are tasked with helping to restore balance to a world thrown into chaos. Their ultimate mission also includes diligently preparing the Earth for the imminent return of a celestial being who will mark the definitive end of the current cycle of humanity and usher in the auspicious beginning of a new, more enlightened era. Similarly, the Dogon people, a tribe residing in the remote regions of Mali, West Africa, hold a fascinating and detailed belief in amphibious beings called the Nomos. These beings reportedly originated from the Sirius star system and arrived on Earth in a spinning ark or spacecraft. What makes the Dogon story so astonishing is that this pre-industrial tribe appears to possess remarkably advanced and specific astronomical knowledge of the Sirius system, which is the brightest star visible from Earth. They possess knowledge about Sirius B, a companion star to Sirius A that is a tiny, incredibly dense white dwarf, completely invisible to the naked eye. They know of its 50-year orbital period and its small size, details that align precisely with modern scientific discoveries made with powerful telescopes. The Dogon also mention a third celestial body in the Sirius system, Sirius C, whose existence has been debated by astronomers but has not yet been officially confirmed. The Nomos are described as hybrid beings, part human and part fish, resembling aquatic creatures. According to the Dogon myths, they possessed great wisdom and were the ones who introduced the Dogon people to the foundational teachings of agriculture, astronomy, social structure, and religion. These beings are said to have lived among humans for a period before returning to the cosmos, promising to one day return. While the Dogon's knowledge is undeniably remarkable, the accuracy of their information has been questioned by some skeptics. Some researchers argue that the Dogon may have acquired this specific astronomical data through contact with European anthropologists or missionaries in the early 20th century who were already aware of the scientific discoveries about Sirius B. What do archaeology and mainstream science say? For the vast majority of archaeologists, historians, and scientists, the assertion that the ancient Sumerian Anunnaki were extraterrestrials who visited Earth conspicuously lacks any form of concrete, verifiable evidence. To date, no unambiguous archaeological remains have been discovered that would definitively suggest the use of extraterrestrial technology or prove direct physical contact between ancient civilizations and beings from other planets. The artifacts presented as proof, such as strange figurines or depictions on rock walls, are, from a scientific perspective, more plausibly explained within their cultural and artistic contexts. It is true that some ancient cultures described their gods as celestial beings who descended from the sky, a narrative that easily evokes the idea of visitors from another world. However, from a rigorous archaeological and anthropological perspective, these accounts are seen as powerful symbolic or metaphorical representations of natural or cosmic forces. The sky gods represent the power of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the weather, forces that govern the lives of early agricultural societies. The ancient Sumerian texts that describe the Anunnaki as deities who created humanity to cultivate the land and serve them are, according to mainstream scholarship, primarily foundation myths. These stories aim to explain the fundamental origins of life, the structure of society, the divine right of kings, and the relationship between humanity and the powerful, unpredictable forces of nature, rather than being literal journalistic accounts of historical events. Thus, for most scientists, the theory of extraterrestrial Anunnaki faces significant and substantial challenges due to a complete lack of empirical evidence. It is also argued that ancient mythologies are incredibly complex and multifaceted symbolic systems, and isolating specific elements from their rich cultural and linguistic context is a problematic methodology that often leads to gross misinterpretations and anachronistic conclusions. One of the most widely debated topics has been the construction of the pyramids. According to mainstream archaeology, the pyramids of Egypt, while magnificent and awe-inspiring, do not necessitate extraterrestrial intervention to be explained. The scientific consensus is that the ancient Egyptians possessed all the necessary components for such a massive undertaking: access to a large, well-organized, and motivated workforce, a profound and practical knowledge of geometry and engineering, and readily available local materials. It is now widely believed that a sizable labor force of skilled paid workers, rather than a massive population of enslaved individuals, meticulously constructed the pyramids. Evidence from nearby worker villages and tombs suggests they were well-fed, organized into efficient teams, and provided with shelter and essential medical care. The vast majority of the limestone blocks were quarried locally on the Giza Plateau itself, while the massive granite blocks used in the inner chambers originated from Aswan, located approximately 500 miles or 800 kilometers to the south. Recent discoveries such as the Diary of Merer, a papyrus logbook from the reign of Khufu, indicate that boats and a system of artificial canals were ingeniously utilized to transport stones along the Nile River directly to a harbor at the construction site. Ancient reliefs like those found in the tomb of Jehuti-Hotep depict large teams of men using massive wooden sledges to drag colossal statues and stones with water or wet clay, possibly poured ahead of the sledge to reduce friction on the sand. One leading theory for raising the blocks involves the use of massive ramps, either straight, zigzagging, or encircling the pyramid, that permitted workers to drag the stones to higher and higher levels. However, the exact methods used for lifting and precisely placing the most massive stones, particularly at the highest levels of the pyramid, remain a subject of active research and academic debate. While ongoing archaeological research continues to uncover new and fascinating information without the discovery of a definitive architectural plan, the precise techniques employed by the ancient Egyptians to build their most iconic monuments will likely remain to some extent an intriguing and enduring historical mystery. This concludes our fascinating and extensive journey through the rich history of the ancient Sumerians, the enigmatic figures of the Anunnaki, and the various intriguing alternative theories that surround them. Hypotheses such as the existence of crypto-terrestrials, the idea of the Anunnaki as extraterrestrial creators, or the interpretation of UFOs within biblical texts remain highly speculative and currently lack the substantial verifiable evidence required for acceptance by conventional science. Even so, it is humbling to acknowledge that there may still be countless mysteries awaiting discovery beneath the sands of our world and within the vast, silent expanse of the cosmos. Exploring these unconventional theories, whether one believes them or not, serves a valuable purpose. It encourages us to maintain an open and inquisitive mind, to challenge our most deeply held preconceived assumptions, and to continually nurture our innate and most human quality, our boundless curiosity. To truly understand the story of the Anunnaki and their profound impact on humanity, one must look beyond their roles as creators and rulers and see them as they are depicted in the texts, a complex, powerful, and deeply dysfunctional family. Their saga is not one of monolithic divine will, but a celestial drama filled with bitter rivalries, passionate love affairs, fierce ambition, and tragic betrayals. The fate of humanity was often little more than a secondary consequence of the power struggles that raged within the ruling clan of Nibiru. At the heart of this drama, as we have seen, was the endless conflict between the two half-brothers, Enki and Enlil. Enki, the brilliant and often compassionate scientist, saw humanity as his proudest creation, a species with boundless potential that deserved guidance, not just enslavement. Enlil, the rigid and authoritarian commander, viewed humans as a means to an end, a workforce to be controlled, disciplined, and, if necessary, disposed of. This fundamental schism between the two most powerful Anunnaki on Earth created two opposing factions, and other gods often found themselves forced to choose sides. Into this dynamic entered a new generation of gods, born on Earth, and with a different perspective than their forebears from Nibiru. One of the most vibrant and formidable of these was Inanna, later known as Ishtar by the Akkadians and Babylonians. The granddaughter of Enlil, Inanna was a goddess of breathtaking complexity. She was at once the goddess of love and beauty, and the goddess of war and political power. Fiercely ambitious and independent, Inanna was not content to remain in the shadow of the older male gods. She famously journeyed to the city of Eridu to visit Enki, where in a celebrated myth she cleverly tricked the old wise god into giving her many of the sacred Mi, the divine powers of civilization, which she then triumphantly brought back to her own city of Uruk, greatly increasing its prestige and her own power. Her story is one of a goddess demanding her rightful place, often using her cunning and allure as weapons in a world dominated by patriarchal authority. Another pivotal figure in the second generation was Marduk, the firstborn son of Enki. Raised on Earth, Marduk harbored a deep-seated belief that he, not Enlil or his heirs, was destined to hold supreme authority over the planet. This ambition put him in direct conflict with Enlil's clan, particularly with Enlil's son Ninurta, a mighty warrior god who saw himself as his father's rightful successor. The rivalry between Marduk and Ninurta escalated into outright celestial wars, with the texts describing epic battles fought in the skies with terrifying weapons. Eventually, as Babylonian civilization rose to prominence, Marduk's cult grew in power. The Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, was rewritten to elevate Marduk above all other gods. In this version of the story, it is Marduk who slays the primordial chaos monster Tiamat and creates the cosmos, effectively usurping the roles previously held by Anu and Enlil. For Sitchin and his followers, this was not just a shift in religious belief, but a political document reflecting a real historical coup where Marduk's faction finally seized control of the Anunnaki Earth mission. The personal ambitions, loves, and hatreds of this celestial family were, in essence, the engines of human history, with our cities rising and falling according to which divine patron held ascendancy in the heavens. Gold, the metal of the gods, the obsession of man. The entire premise of the Anunnaki's long and arduous journey to Earth, the very reason for humanity's creation, hinges on a single specific element: gold. But why gold? Why would a civilization capable of interstellar travel be so desperate for this particular soft yellow metal? The ancient texts are clear that it was needed to save their home planet, Nibiru, but the modern interpretation of this need provides a fascinating intersection of myth and science. From a scientific perspective, gold possesses a unique and remarkable combination of properties that make it exceptionally valuable for advanced technological applications. It is an excellent conductor of electricity and is highly resistant to corrosion, making it ideal for sophisticated electronics. More importantly, in the context of the Anunnaki story, gold is one of the best-known reflectors of electromagnetic radiation, including infrared radiation or heat. A thin layer of gold is used today on the visors of astronauts' helmets, on satellite components, and on the windows of modern skyscrapers to reflect heat and harmful solar rays. The theory, therefore, is that the Anunnaki's plan to disperse gold dust into Nibiru's upper atmosphere was a sound and sophisticated feat of geoengineering. The fine gold particulates would have created a reflective shield, a thermal blanket that would protect the planet's surface from excessive solar radiation while also preventing the planet's own internal heat from escaping, thereby stabilizing a failing climate. It was not greed or a desire for ornamentation that drove them, but a desperate planet-wide survival imperative. This primordial importance of gold to our creators may also offer a new lens through which to view humanity's own long and often destructive obsession with the metal. Throughout virtually every culture on Earth, gold has been held in the highest esteem. It has been the standard of wealth, the symbol of royalty and divinity, and the cause of countless wars and conquests. While economists may attribute its value to its rarity and durability, the Anunnaki theory suggests a deeper, more primal reason. Could our innate reverence for gold be a kind of genetic memory, a deeply embedded echo of the values of our creators? Did the Anunnaki instill in their human workers a profound respect for the substance they were mining, ensuring it would always be sought after and collected? When we look at the immense quantities of gold that were plundered from the Americas by European conquistadors, or the vast golden treasures buried with the Egyptian pharaohs, or the use of gold in sacred religious icons, we see a species inexplicably drawn to this one element above all others. Perhaps our endless quest for gold is not just a human folly, but the faint, lingering echo of a 450,000-year-old divine command, a mission we have long forgotten but continue to carry out nonetheless. Beyond the cycles of their own home planet, the Anunnaki are believed to have possessed a profound understanding of much grander cosmic clocks, particularly the slow, subtle wobble of our own planet known as the precession of the equinoxes. This is a real astronomical phenomenon caused by the gravitational pull of the Sun and Moon on Earth's equatorial bulge. It causes the planet's axis to trace out a slow circle in the heavens, a cycle so vast that it takes approximately 25,120 years to complete one full great year. Every 260 years or so, this position moves into a new zodiacal constellation, marking the transition from one astrological age to the next. We are currently transitioning out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. The astonishing fact is that many ancient civilizations, including the Sumerians, Egyptians, Mayans, and ancient Indians, appear to have had precise knowledge of this immense celestial cycle, a knowledge that seems far beyond what should have been possible for civilizations without advanced telescopes or millennia of continuous recorded observation. For proponents of the Anunnaki theory, this advanced knowledge is not a mystery, but further evidence of a legacy left behind by our celestial teachers. They propose that the Anunnaki understood and used the Great Year as their primary cosmic calendar for timing major events on Earth. The transitions between ages, from the age of Taurus, when the bull was worshipped in Egypt and Crete, to the age of Aries, the time of the sacrificial ram, to the age of Pisces, symbolized by the fish in early Christianity, were not arbitrary cultural shifts, but were perhaps timed to coincide with specific Anunnaki plans or prophecies. This grand cosmic clock may also be linked to the prophecies of their return. Sitchin's proposed 3,600-year orbit for Nibiru is itself a major cyclical event. If the Anunnaki's visits to Earth were timed according to the intersection of Nibiru's orbit with Earth's own path, then the precession of the equinoxes could have been used to further refine the timing of their arrivals and departures, and to mark the beginning and end of the great ages of human civilization that they initiated. The intricate interlocking calendars of the Maya, the concept of the yugas in Hindu cosmology, and the Egyptian belief in recurring cycles of creation all seem to point to a shared ancient doctrine of time as a great repeating wheel. This doctrine, it is argued, is the echo of Anunnaki science, a calendar that measures not in days or years, but in millennia, and one whose cycles may foretell the dawning of a new age, and perhaps the return of the gods who first set the clock in motion. Our voyage through these ancient and provocative tales has taken us from the clay tablets of Sumer to the icy wastes of Antarctica, from the double helix of our DNA to the farthest reaches of the cosmos. We have explored a narrative that seeks to re-enchant our world, to replace the silence of random evolution with the epic drama of a cosmic family, and to see in our most enduring myths the faint outlines of a forgotten history. The story of the Anunnaki, whether one views it as literal truth, as powerful metaphor, or as modern folklore, forces us to ask the most fundamental questions about who we are and where we come from. It presents a universe that is not empty, but teeming with life and ancient struggles, where humanity is not an accident, but a purposeful creation, a species born of clay and starlight, forever caught between our terrestrial limitations and a divine, perhaps alien, inheritance. The theories we have examined are grand, sweeping, and often lack the kind of empirical proof demanded by modern science. Yet their persistence speaks to a deep human need to find meaning in the mysteries that surround us, the silent, imposing grandeur of the pyramids, the sudden spark of human consciousness, the uncanny parallels in global myths, and the strange, haunting feeling that we are not alone. As we stand in the twilight of one age and on the cusp of another, looking up at the same stars that shone down upon the builders of Uruk and Giza, we are left with a profound sense of wonder. Perhaps the greatest truth is not a single, final answer, but lies in the journey of questioning itself. By daring to entertain these thoughts, by allowing our minds to wander through these grand what-ifs, we keep alive the spirit of exploration that defines our species. The final conclusion, as always, rests not in ancient texts or modern theories, but within the quiet sovereign territory of your own mind. The story is yours to weigh, to consider, and ultimately to believe or to set aside. The ancient Mesopotamian world was not populated solely by gods and humans. The rich tapestry of their myths is woven with a host of other strange and mysterious entities, monstrous guardians, wise sages who were part fish, and fearsome demons who brought plague and madness. In a purely mythological reading, these are the spirits and monsters of a vibrant but superstitious worldview. However, when viewed through the technological lens of the Anunnaki theory, these beings are transformed into something else entirely. Plausible components of a complex extraterrestrial ecosystem established on Earth. Consider the figure of Humbaba, or Huwawa, the terrifying guardian of the sacred cedar forest in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He is described as a monstrous giant whose face is a single coiled line like an intestine, whose roar is the flood, whose breath is death, and whose mouth is fire. Gilgamesh and Enkidu must defeat this creature in a heroic quest. Rather than a supernatural monster, could Humbaba have been an advanced biological or robotic guardian? A piece of sophisticated Anunnaki security technology, perhaps a bioengineered creature or an automated defense system tasked with protecting a valuable resource or a sensitive installation, the cedar forest being a site for lumber, a crucial construction material. Its strange appearance and deadly abilities could be a primitive description of complex machinery and advanced weaponry. Then there are the 7 Apkallu, the wise sages, who are said to have lived before the Great Flood. They are described in the myths as having been sent by the god Enki to teach the foundational arts and sciences to humanity. Intriguingly, they are often depicted as humanoid figures wearing fish-like cloaks or as literal human-fish hybrids. While this is traditionally seen as a symbol of their origin from the watery abyss, the realm of the wise god Enki, an alternative interpretation is possible. Could the Apkallu have been a special class of being, perhaps the very first, most successful human Anunnaki hybrids who acted as a teacher class? Or perhaps they were even a form of biological android, their fish cloaks being the primitive interpretation of environmental suits or breathing apparatus necessary for them to operate in Earth's environment or to emerge from an aquatic base. Even the malevolent demons of Mesopotamian lore, such as Pazuzu or Lamashtu, can be re-examined. These beings were not evil in the modern moral sense, but were agents of chaos, sickness, and misfortune. They were often depicted as grotesque hybrids of different animals. Could these demons have been the unfortunate byproducts of Anunnaki genetic experimentation gone wrong? Perhaps they were discarded biological weapons, or even microscopic life forms, bacteria and viruses, that the Anunnaki understood and personified as malevolent spirits to explain the concept of disease to a primitive human population. The amulets and incantations used to ward them off might have been a simplified form of preventative medicine or sanitation protocols taught by the Anunnaki. In this view, the entire supernatural landscape of ancient Sumer becomes a reflection of the Anunnaki's advanced and perhaps sometimes messy biological and technological footprint on Earth. Every ancient civilization was built upon a foundation of intricate ritual and sacred incantation. Priests performed complex ceremonies, citizens chanted hymns to the gods, and kings sought divine favor through prescribed actions and words. From a historical perspective, this is the very essence of religion, a system of worship and belief designed to appease and communicate with the divine. But if the gods were not spirits but physical technological beings, then the very nature of ritual and prayer must be re-evaluated. They may represent a form of cargo cult, a term used to describe isolated tribal societies that, after encountering advanced technology, like cargo planes and ducks, attempt to summon it back by mimicking the actions of the operators without understanding the underlying principles. Consider the act of prayer or chanting in a Sumerian temple. A priest facing the statue of a god would recite a long and specific sequence of words. Was this merely worship, or could it have been an attempt to replicate a voice command? The Anunnaki, interacting with their human servants, may have used vocal commands to operate their devices, open doors, or activate tools. Over generations, as the technology disappeared but the memory remained, the specific commands could have been preserved as holy words of power, their original meaning lost, but their perceived potency retained. The chanting of an incantation, repeated perfectly, might have been a corrupted echo of a forgotten password. The same logic can be applied to ritual actions. The precise drawing of a sacred circle on the ground before a ceremony, was it a symbolic act of consecration, or was it the necessary perimeter required to activate a device that produced a localized energy field? The ritualistic sacrifice of an animal its blood poured onto an altar? Was it an offering to appease a hungry god? Or was it a misunderstanding of a process where biological samples were required for analysis by Anunnaki scientific equipment? The elaborate priestly garments with their specific colors and adornments, were they simply symbolic vestments, or were they a faded memory of the different uniforms worn by Anunnaki technicians, engineers, and commanders? In this interpretation, the great temples were not just houses of worship, but were built on the sites of former Anunnaki command centers, landing pads, or laboratories. The inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest could enter, might have been the former location of a control panel or a communication device. The rituals performed by humanity for millennia could be seen as a grand, poignant, and ultimately futile attempt to reactivate the lost science of the gods, a science that had become indistinguishable from magic. The power was gone, but the memory of the operating manual, however corrupted, lived on as sacred ritual. The story of humanity's creation, as told in the Atrahasis poem, contains a crucial and deeply mystical detail. Humans were not fashioned from clay alone. They were created from clay, mixed with the flesh and blood of a sacrificed god, a deity named Gesh-tu-i, who was described as a god who has intelligence. It was this divine admixture that was intended to give humanity its spirit, its cognitive ability, and its self-awareness. The texts state that by binding the divine essence to the mortal form, the Anunnaki ensured that the spirit of the god would live on within humankind. From a purely scientific modern perspective, this can be interpreted simply as the addition of Anunnaki DNA to a hominid genome. The blood is the genetic code, and the intelligence of the god is the blueprint for a larger, more complex brain. However, this interpretation, while neat, may not capture the full depth of what the Sumerians themselves believed. They had a complex understanding of the soul, believing that a person was composed of multiple spiritual components. These included the Z, the life force or vitality, and the Atemu, the individual spirit or ghost, which traveled to the underworld after death. Could the divine spark imparted by the Anunnaki have been something more than just genetic information? This line of speculation delves into the very nature of consciousness. If the Anunnaki were a supremely advanced race, it is possible they had mastered sciences that are still purely theoretical to us. They may have understood consciousness not as a mere byproduct of complex brain chemistry, but as a fundamental, perhaps quantum, property of the universe that could be isolated, transferred, or bound to a physical vessel. The sacrifice of the god Gesh-tu-i, then, takes on a new meaning. It was not a barbaric act, but a sophisticated procedure. Perhaps his spirit, his unique pattern of consciousness, his memories, his very essence, was digitally scanned or energetically transferred and then infused into the matrix of the new human species. This would mean that every human being carries a faint, fractured echo of this primordial divine consciousness. This could be the source of our species' unique qualities, our capacity for abstract thought, our unquenchable curiosity, our yearning for meaning, our artistic creativity, and our deep sense of being somehow more than just biological machines. It could also explain the inherent duality of our nature, the animal part from the clay of the earth, and the divine part from the spirit of the stars, forever in conflict within us. Our soul, in this view, is not a gift from a supernatural god, but a piece of legacy software, a fragment of a vast extraterrestrial consciousness bestowed upon us by our ancient and enigmatic creators. Our journey has now spiraled ever deeper from the tangible mysteries of stone and gold to the ethereal questions of spirit and consciousness. We have peered into the family feuds of the gods, imagined their technology as our magic, and considered the possibility that our very souls are an echo of their being. The narrative of the Anunnaki, in its fullest form, offers nothing less than a complete reimagining of the human story, a grand unified theory of our history, biology, psychology, and spirituality. It paints a picture of humanity as a deliberately engineered species, born into servitude, but gifted with a spark of its creator's own divine fire. Our greatest achievements and our most tragic flaws, our noblest aspirations, and our darkest impulses may all be reflections of the nature of the beings who fashioned us. The rivalry between wisdom and authority, between compassion and control, personified by Enki and Enlil, may be the central conflict that plays out not only in our civilizations, but within every human heart. As we conclude this exploration, we are left standing before a mirror. The face we see is our own, but the Anunnaki hypothesis asks us to look deeper, to see the faint shimmering reflection of another face behind it, the face of a giant, a star traveler, a god. It suggests that when we study our oldest myths, we are not reading fiction, but are rather deciphering a fragmented and time-worn family history. And when we gaze at the stars, we may not be looking out at an empty and indifferent void, but are looking towards the forgotten home of our distant, long-lost kin. This story, in the end, is not about aliens. It is about us. It is a quest to understand the profound and persistent enigma of our own existence, an enigma that continues to whisper to us from the dust of ancient cities and the silent spiraling galaxies overhead. The dawn of civilization in Sumer was marked by an explosion of innovation, but none was more transformative than the sudden appearance of a sophisticated system of writing, cuneiform. On clay tablets, humanity learned to record inventories, laws, histories, and even poetry. This leap from primitive communication to complex recorded language is, in the conventional view, a testament to human ingenuity. Yet, within the Anunnaki narrative, the origin of language, like that of humanity itself, is seen as a gift and a tool. It is proposed that language, in its earliest unified form, was bestowed upon humanity by the Anunnaki to make them more efficient workers. A species that could receive complex verbal commands, communicate with each other about tasks, and maintain records was infinitely more useful than one that relied on simple grunts and gestures. Cuneiform, with its precise wedge-shaped characters pressed into clay, was perhaps not just an alphabet, but a form of data processing technology perfectly suited for the bureaucratic needs of managing a global mining operation, tracking gold shipments, rationing food supplies, and codifying the laws of the gods. For a time, humanity was united, speaking one language and working towards a common, God-given purpose. This era of unity is reflected in the famous biblical story of the Tower of Babel. In the book of Genesis, the descendants of Noah, all speaking one language, migrate to the land of Shinar, Sumer, and begin to build a great city with a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. From the Anunnaki perspective, this was not the act of a single omnipotent god, but a strategic political decision made by the Anunnaki leadership, most likely the ever-cautious Enlil. He would have watched humanity's growing proficiency and unity with alarm. A united, intelligent, and ambitious human race could eventually become a threat to the Anunnaki themselves. The tower was not just a structure of hubris. It may have been an attempt by humans to build their own launch facility, a gateway to the heavens, Shem, to reach the level of their masters. Enlil, seeing this as the ultimate transgression, intervened decisively. The confounding of the tongues was not a supernatural miracle, but likely a deliberate act of social engineering. The Anunnaki could have introduced different linguistic patterns into various segments of the human population, fracturing their ability to communicate and organize on a large scale. By dividing humanity with the curse of mutual unintelligibility, Enlil ensured they would remain fragmented, suspicious of one another, and far too preoccupied with their own conflicts to ever again unite and challenge the gods. The gift of language, once a tool for efficient servitude, was weaponized to become an instrument of perpetual division. The concept of an afterlife is one of the most powerful and persistent ideas in human culture. For the ancient Mesopotamians, the destination for the spirits of the dead was a bleak and shadowy realm known as Kur or Irkalla. It was described as the land of no return, a dark, dusty underworld located deep beneath the earth, ruled by the formidable goddess Ereshkigal, the sister of Inanna. In this realm, the spirits of the dead, the Atemu, flitted about like bats, eating dust and drinking muddy water, forever cut off from the light and life of the world above. It was not a place of punishment like the Christian hell, but simply a gloomy and inescapable reality for all mortals. Through the technological lens of the Anunnaki theory, what could this grim underworld truly represent? One chilling possibility is that Kur was not a mythical realm at all, but a real physical location. Given the Anunnaki's penchant for mining, it could have been a vast, abandoned subterranean mining complex, repurposed as a quarantine or containment zone. Perhaps it was a place where humans who carried diseases or those who were deemed rebellious were exiled to live out their days. The 7 gates one had to pass to enter could have been literal high-tech security checkpoints of this massive underground prison. An even more speculative theory connects the underworld to another planet. The Anunnaki traveled between worlds. Is it possible they transported the spirits of deceased humans elsewhere? Mars, a planet long associated with death and war, is often cited. Could the bleak, dusty red landscape of Mars, as seen by the Anunnaki, have been the original inspiration for the Land of Dust? Perhaps Kur was a failed or abandoned Anunnaki colony on Mars, and the Atemu were not spirits, but the actual descendants of human workers who had been transported there and left behind, living a bleak existence in the dying world's subterranean habitats. The most advanced interpretation delves into the nature of consciousness itself. If the Atemu was an energetic or quantum signature, the soul we discussed earlier, then Kur could have been a form of technological containment field, a vast data server or soul catcher designed to store these consciousness patterns after the physical body died. This would prevent these disembodied human spirits from roaming freely and potentially causing trouble. The Anunnaki, having given humanity consciousness, may have also felt the need to manage it after death. In this view, the afterlife was an artificial construct, a spiritual prison created by the gods to ensure that even in death, humanity remained under their ultimate control. The journey of Inanna into this underworld to rescue her beloved Dumuzid was not just a myth of seasonal cycles, but perhaps the tale of a daring raid on this cosmic prison, a goddess using her own technology to hack the system and liberate a captive consciousness. While the central drama of the Anunnaki is often framed around the masculine rivalry of Enki and Enlil, to do so is to ignore the immense power and influence wielded by the Anunnaki goddesses. These were not passive consorts or fertility symbols. They were brilliant scientists, formidable rulers, and fierce warriors whose actions were every bit as pivotal in shaping the destiny of gods and humans. At the very genesis of humanity stood Ninhursag, also known as Ninti, Lady of the Rib. A half-sister to both Enki and Enlil, she was the chief geneticist and medical officer of the Earth mission. While Enki may have provided the initial scientific vision for creating humanity, it was Ninhursag who was the womb goddess, the one who possessed the deep biological expertise to successfully blend Anunnaki and hominid DNA, and to bring the first humans to term, reportedly using Anunnaki females as surrogate mothers. She was the mistress of the life-giving process, a figure of immense scientific and biological authority. Her relationship with her half-brothers was complex. At times, she was their collaborator, and at others, their rival, fiercely protective of her creations and her own status. We have already met the ambitious Inanna, Ishtar, who refused to be constrained by her gender and audaciously carved out her own empire of influence through cunning, warfare, and sensuality. But there was also her elder sister, the dark and powerful Ereshkigal, who was given dominion over the underworld, Kur. Her story is not one of evil, but of tragedy and sovereignty in a lonely domain. She ruled her realm with absolute authority, and even the most powerful gods of the upper world feared her. Her story represents the inescapable power of death and decay, a necessary and respected, if feared, cosmic force. The trajectory of these powerful goddesses, however, seems to follow a downward arc over time. In the earliest Sumerian periods, goddesses like Ninhursag were central to the act of creation. As time progressed and Babylonian culture rose, the male god Marduk was elevated to the supreme position, absorbing the powers and attributes of many earlier deities, both male and female. The divine feminine, while still present in figures like Ishtar, began to be pushed to the periphery or relegated to more specific, less cosmic roles. Could this shift in human mythology reflect a real power struggle within the Anunnaki leadership? Perhaps the initial mission on Earth was more collaborative, with female scientists and administrators holding key positions. Over time, did a more aggressive patriarchal faction led by figures like Enlil and later Marduk seize control, marginalizing the female leadership? The subsequent suppression of goddess worship and the rise of staunchly patriarchal religions in human history could be seen as a direct cultural echo of this divine political shift, a terrestrial reflection of a celestial war of the sexes. The Sumerian king list tells us that kingship was lowered from heaven, and the epic tales are filled with stories of demigods, the offspring of unions between Anunnaki and humans, such as the mighty Gilgamesh. This concept of a divine bloodline, a sacred inheritance passed from the gods to a chosen ruling class, did not end with the Sumerians. It is a thread that runs through nearly all of subsequent human history, from the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of Rome and the monarchies of Europe who claimed to rule by divine right. These families, endowed with a greater portion of Anunnaki genetics, would have possessed higher intelligence, longer lifespans, and a natural charisma, or right to rule. They were entrusted to act as the Anunnaki's regents on Earth, to guide civilization according to the gods' long-term plans, and to ensure their legacy was preserved. This leads to one of the most compelling and controversial extensions of the theory that these bloodlines may have been secretly preserved and survive to this day. This idea dovetails with many modern conspiracy theories concerning elite families, secret societies, and a hidden power structure that manipulates global events from behind the scenes. Could the persistent and often interlocking network of powerful families who seem to dominate global finance, politics, and industry be the modern descendants of these original Anunnaki human hybrids? This theory suggests that the ancient rivalry between the factions of Enki and Enlil never truly ended. It was simply passed down to their human descendants, who continue to wage a shadow war for control of the planet. The Enki bloodlines, valuing knowledge, freedom, and technological progress, sometimes at any cost, might be behind movements of enlightenment, scientific revolution, and individual liberty. The Enlil bloodlines, valuing order, hierarchy, control, and tradition, might be behind structures of rigid government, dogmatic religion, and centralized financial control. The great ideological conflicts of human history, democracy versus authoritarianism, science versus dogma, freedom versus security, could be interpreted as external manifestations of this ancient inherited conflict between two different extraterrestrial philosophies. According to this view, we are not just living through history. We are living through the endgame of a war that began in the heavens hundreds of thousands of years ago, with the fate of our planet hanging in the balance, a secret inheritance that continues to shape our world in ways we can barely begin to comprehend. Our odyssey of thought has now brought us to the very edge of the map, where history bleeds into conspiracy and science dissolves into the surreal. We have journeyed from the creation of our species to the potential creation of our souls, from the politics of the gods to the unseen politics of our modern world. We have considered the possibility that our languages, our social structures, our deepest fears of the underworld, and our most powerful family dynasties are all part of a vast and ancient extraterrestrial legacy. The story of the Anunnaki, when expanded to its furthest horizons, becomes an all-encompassing mythology for the space age. It offers a framework, however speculative, to connect the most disparate and mysterious aspects of the human experience. It suggests that the world is not as it seems, that history has a secret, and that the answers to our biggest questions lie not in the future, but buried in our most distant, forgotten past. Whether any of this is true is perhaps not the most important question. The power of this narrative lies in its ability to shatter our certainty, to force us to look at the world with fresh eyes, and to imagine possibilities that conventional thought has deemed impossible. It reminds us that our known history is but a single page in a library of unimaginable size, and that we may yet be infants in a universe far older, stranger, and more populated than we have ever dared to dream. The journey ends here, but the questions it raises will echo into the silence across the final horizon of our own curiosity. Let us then press onward beyond the veil of the known into the more subtle and pervasive legacies of our story. For if the Anunnaki shaped our bodies and our bloodlines, it is possible they also sculpted the very invisible architecture of our minds and our societies. A civilization is more than just people and buildings. It is a complex operating system built on shared rules, rhythms, and beliefs. According to the Anunnaki theory, these foundational software programs for human society were not developed through slow trial and error, but were installed much like a programmer installs an operating system on a new computer. Consider the origin of law. The great legal codes of Mesopotamia, such as the famous Code of Ur-Nammu and its successor, the Code of Hammurabi, appear with remarkable sophistication. They cover everything from property rights and trade agreements to family law and criminal justice. Conventionally, this is seen as the birth of human jurisprudence, but in the Anunnaki framework, these were not human inventions. They were simplified versions of Anunnaki law handed down to their chosen kings to ensure the smooth and orderly functioning of the human workforce. The concept of an eye, for example, was not about primitive vengeance, but about maintaining the integrity of the labor pool. A worker with a damaged eye was a less effective asset. Law, in this sense, was the ultimate tool of social engineering, a set of behavioral protocols designed to keep the human biocomputers productive, predictable, and subservient. Another powerful yet often overlooked tool of social control is music. The ancient Sumerians possessed a deep and complex understanding of music, developing diatonic scales and sophisticated stringed instruments like the lyre. We often think of music as a purely artistic or emotional expression, but the Anunnaki may have understood and utilized its deeper scientific properties. Sound and frequency have a direct and measurable effect on the human brain and body. Specific harmonies and rhythms can induce states of calm, heightened focus, or even ecstatic trance. Could it be that the sacred hymns and temple music of the ancient world were more than just worship? They may have been a form of sonic technology, carefully composed by the Anunnaki to manage the psychology of the masses. Music played in the fields could have been designed to increase worker productivity and morale. Temple chants could have used specific resonant frequencies to facilitate a sense of awe and obedience, or even to promote healing and well-being within the population. Just as they gave humanity the hardware of an advanced biology, they may have also provided the software of law and the ambient programming of music to ensure their creation ran smoothly according to their divine and deeply pragmatic specifications. The Anunnaki theory centers on a global industrial-scale mining operation that lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. Such a colossal undertaking would have inevitably left a profound and lasting scar on the planet's ecology. While the myths focus on the creation of humans and the dramas of the gods, we can speculate on the environmental legacy that this long occupation would have entailed. The primary objective was the extraction of gold, likely through massive open-pit mining, deep shaft mining, and hydraulic mining, where high-pressure water is used to erode hillsides. These activities are environmentally devastating. They would have caused widespread deforestation, soil erosion, and the pollution of rivers with silt and heavy metals. Could the ancient myths that speak of angry river gods or vengeful earth spirits be a folk memory of the ecological disasters wrought by these mining operations? A river that suddenly becomes toxic and barren, killing the fish and poisoning the land, could easily be interpreted by a primitive culture as the wrath of a deity, rather than the predictable result of industrial runoff from a nearby Anunnaki facility. Furthermore, the Anunnaki would have brought their own Nibiruan biology with them. It is possible they engaged in terraforming on a local scale, introducing plants from their home world that could thrive in Earth's environment and perhaps provide them with familiar sources of food or medicine. Could some of Earth's most enigmatic and out-of-place species, plants with unusual medicinal properties or animals that seem to have no clear evolutionary predecessors, be the descendants of these alien introductions? A Nibiruan plant that proves invasive could be the origin of myths about cursed or demonic vegetation that chokes out native life. Conversely, the Anunnaki may have encountered Earth life forms that were dangerous or problematic for their operations. They may have undertaken large-scale extermination campaigns against certain predators or pests. The heroic myths of gods slaying terrible monsters, dragons, serpents, and other chimeric beasts might be glorified accounts of the Anunnaki systematically eliminating native Earth species that posed a threat to their personnel or their human workforce. The environmental footprint of the Anunnaki, therefore, may not just be found in mysterious megalithic ruins, but in the very soil and life of our planet, in unexplained ecological dead zones, in the strange genetics of certain plants, and in the forgotten extinctions that have come down to us as heroic myths. Across the globe, a profound and unifying obsession of the ancient world was the precise tracking of celestial events. Countless megalithic sites from Stonehenge in England to Newgrange in Ireland and the Sun Dagger of Chaco Canyon in North America are meticulously aligned to the solstices and equinoxes. The conventional explanation is that these alignments were crucial for agricultural calendars, signaling the times for planting and harvesting, and served as the backdrop for important religious ceremonies. The Anunnaki theory, however, suggests a more technological and vital purpose. This was not just about knowing when to plant corn, it was about knowing when to power up the machine. Imagine that the Anunnaki's most advanced technologies, their energy plants, their portal systems, their long-range communication arrays, could not be run continuously. Perhaps they required immense amounts of energy drawn directly from the Earth's own electromagnetic field or from the sun's radiation. To function, these systems might have needed the planet to be in a very specific celestial and gravitational alignment to create a favorable energy resonance. The winter solstice, for instance, the shortest day of the year, is a moment of immense astronomical significance. Could it be that at this precise moment, the Earth's specific tilt and position relative to the Sun created a unique energetic condition that was harnessed by Anunnaki technology? The great stone circles and chambers were not merely observatories. They were the capacitors, receivers, and focusing lenses of a vast planetary God machine. The famous heel stone at Stonehenge, which marks the summer solstice sunrise, might have been the primary targeting marker for a device that collected solar energy. The narrow passage at Newgrange, which is illuminated by the winter solstice sunrise for only a few minutes, might have been a calibration port for a subterranean energy grid, a system that would only boot up when the solar alignment was perfect. The human priests and shamans who maintained these sites for millennia after the Anunnaki's departure were not just performing religious rituals. They were the faithful caretakers of a dormant technology they no longer understood. They continued to gather at the prescribed times, performing the old rites, hoping to reawaken the magic of the gods. They knew when the power was supposed to come on, but they had forgotten how to flip the switch. Their obsession with the cosmic calendar was the echo of a forgotten technical manual, a testament to a time when the turning of the seasons was not just about life and death, but about turning the power on and off. The perception of immortals, Anunnaki psychology, and the river of time. Perhaps the most challenging yet most crucial aspect to comprehend in the entire Anunnaki saga is the psychological chasm that would separate a being who lives for millennia from one whose life is but a fleeting breath. The Anunnaki, with lifespans stretching across thousands or even tens of thousands of years, would not perceive reality as we do. Their relationship with time itself would be fundamentally different, and understanding this may be the key to understanding their seemingly contradictory behavior. To a being who has witnessed mountains erode and coastlines change, a single human life would flash by in an instant. A human generation would be like a season. The rise and fall of an entire human civilization might be experienced with the same sense of duration that we might feel while watching a feature-length film. This perspective could explain their apparent cruelty and detachment. The decision to wipe out a large portion of the human population in the Great Flood, while horrifying to us, might have been, from their long view, a pragmatic and unsentimental act of pruning the garden or rebooting a faulty program. It was not a passionate genocide, but a detached, long-term management decision. Their emotional landscape would also be alien. How would one experience love, loss, or friendship when one's companions and loved ones wither and die hundreds of times over? Perhaps this is why their deepest emotional connections seem to be with each other, their fellow immortals, leading to the intense family dramas that shape the world. Human beings may have been, for the most part, cherished pets, useful tools, or interesting but temporary projects, but rarely, if ever, peers. Furthermore, their perception of cause and effect would operate on a grand scale. They could make plans that would not come to fruition for 1,000 years. They could afford to be patient, to set in motion events that would unfold over dozens of human generations. The prophecies they may have issued were not necessarily magical divinations of the future, but simply the long-term projections of their plans, a 5,000-year plan for human development. They could be seen as the ultimate chess masters, playing a game on a planetary scale where individual humans were the pawns, and the game itself spanned the entirety of known history. When we judge their actions by our own ephemeral human standards of morality and time, we may be making a fundamental error, like an ant trying to comprehend the motivations of a man. To understand the Anunnaki, we must first try to imagine what it would be like to not be standing in the river of time, but to be watching it flow from the stillness of a vast and lonely shore. And so, our great compilation of this secret history comes to its close. We have journeyed to the heart of the earth and to the edge of the solar system, from the code of our cells to the code of our laws. We have weighed the motivations of gods and the suffering of mortals, considered the nature of technology so advanced it appears as magic, and pondered a vision of time so vast it renders human life a mere flicker. The story of the Anunnaki is a mirror, reflecting our grandest aspirations and our deepest insecurities. It speaks to our longing for purpose, our suspicion that we are part of a story far greater than the one we are told, and our hope that we are not a cosmic accident, but a species with a profound, if forgotten, destiny. It is a modern myth built from the fragments of ancient ones, a narrative for an age that has begun to question every foundation of its own identity. There is no definitive proof for this saga, only tantalizing clues, strange echoes, and unsettling coincidences. It remains a story whispered on the winds of time, carried from the broken tablets of Sumer to the digital screens of today. You have now read its chapters. You have entertained its audacious thoughts. The final page has been turned. What is written upon it now, whether it is a final decisive truth or the beginning of a new and personal quest for answers, is for you and you alone to inscribe.